What would happen if you knew that in the shadows the monsters lurk along the path you chose? Well, Marin, the monster Devourer, finds himself in a dilemma. As a terrifying news spreads, the hero who protected his village has vanished into the dark forest. A group of friends, now celebrating, now in apprehension, must confront the possibility that an even greater threat is lurking. While Marin devours orc meat, a casual conversation transforms into a serious discussion about the meaning of being a hero and what truly lies beneath the surface of an enemy. Thus, the shadow of Maran's past becomes clear, revealing that his journey may be more than just defeating monsters, but understanding the very nature of heroism. The questions torment him. How far will he go to protect those he loves? This world is full of surprising and dangerous things, but fear not, the adventurers are here to sort things out. They raise their shields and protect everyone, and isn't our hero there, strong and steadfast, bravely defending himself from a bizarre creature? The monster is caught off guard, thinking it could take down our guy, but he simply blocks everything. Meanwhile, a teammate shouts for him to prepare for an attack, and then the team's mages unite, and with a shout, unleash a blast of fire at the creature. As the dust settles, guess what? The monster's hand is left on the ground. An archer lets out a sigh and asks if everyone is okay. His comrades are celebrating the victory, and still leveling up. The blonde guy from the group says, "Thanks, Marin, it's great to have a tank on the team, especially being Marin." But suddenly, everyone's faces change to total shock. They shout for Marin to stop, but he couldn't care less. He's getting the knife ready again. You see? He pulls out a sharp blade to begin his new task. The first thing he does is skin the orc, then season the meat and cook something to mask the smell. When he's done, he cuts it into small pieces. The archer complains, I'll never get used to this scene, man." The girl asks why he eats that, but the mage comments that he tries to make everything tasty to give it that special touch. You know, the guy adds a garnish and, with a sparkle, the orc meat pasta is ready. But the girl still finds it disgusting, no matter how nice it looks. Ignoring her, Marin happily devours his food. The buddy asks if monster meat is really tasty. He then offers some to the girl, who declines with a complete disgusted face. Marin thinks it's delicious, and that they are missing out by not savoring that meat and the texture of the pasta. He delights in it. The friends think it's insane that he eats monsters, and with envy-inducing happiness, call him a weirdo. Then, the archer changes the subject and asks if they heard about the hero who disappeared. Well, that girl's eyes widen, and she asks where he was found. He replies that it seems it was in a forest. The wizard is shocked. Who said they passed by there the other day and thought he was a promising hero? Wow. Hearing that, Marin stops eating and becomes thoughtful. Everyone now wonders how strong a monster must be that lives in that crazy forest. The friend comments that Marin is definitely just thinking about how to eat that monster too. The guy only thinks about eating, man. Then, she asks why he started eating monsters in the first place. Well, Marin fixes his gaze as if recalling something important, and the story cuts to 3 months ago, in a small village in the south where everyone is gathered, talking about some cart stuck because of a big red boar. One of the villagers points to a destroyed cart and complains that it's impossible to travel like this. The driver arrives in town all busted. Up damn! Showing that the road was very dangerous, no one could leave that village and the riders were lost. The old man sighs, saying he can't see his son because of the monster blocking everything. The merchants are worried about the short deadline to deliver everything to the noble. After all, that deadline is coming to an end. One of them, completely desperate, shouts that if they are late, they're screwed. Then the man yells from atop the cart that they won't be leaving anytime soon. He tells the protagonist to find a way and get another ride. The merchants draw his friend's attention to the warrior in the helmet. He notices that the guy looks a bit worn out, right? But very muscular at the same time. The other man, well, at that moment, he has a brilliant idea: to hire the knight as a guard. Now that's something. He says they will gather as many travelers as they can and asks the guy to take it easy. The merchant named Marin introduces himself and asks for the name of the figure resting on the cart. Well, that kid introduces himself as Marin. The other one suspects that something is strange about him, thinking he might be a deserter, but Mahara doesn't care, counting on Marin's ability to handle the monsters along the way. Everything is fine. They continue there, listening, not paying much attention because they are thinking. The scene then cuts to the dark forest, where a pair of eyes expresses despair. My friend, someone wonders how this happened while looking at a severed arm. He ends up finding the body of the hero who was brutally slain in the forest. The guy is tremendously horrified. The young man looks back with a pure panic expression. Fear takes over upon seeing the fallen hero in that darkness. Suddenly, he hears a sinister noise and sees a giant creature from the shadows. Then, with his heart in his hand, he realizes there's nowhere to run, but he decides to face it, hoping to come out safe and sound. A dark figure with red eyes was watching. And suddenly, back to the present, Mahara wakes Marin up and apologizes without realizing he was deep asleep. Marin rubbed his face and said everything was fine, while the merchants were just small talking. Mahara, curious, asked the knight where he was going. Well, they continued chatting and also mentioned that they were going to visit family at the Santa Race orphanage after being away for a long time. A big, muscular passenger threw a question about Marin's level, noticing that the guy looked tough. The crazy guy explained that if you look through the mental window, you can see the level that shows everyone's strength, and he, all proud, showed that he had a level 23 and challenged Maran to check his. So, Maran opened the screen and revealed he was level 95. The two guys in the transport were so shocked that they fell backward, looking like they had seen a ghost. Suddenly, the cart braked sharply, and the driver started shouting that a monster was coming. Damn, a huge creature was approaching, kicking up dust and dragging everything in its path. And there it was, the red boar, full of fury, instilling fear in everyone. The beast showed its sharp tusks, those eyes full of hate. The strong guy began to yell for everyone to prepare for a fight and to draw the monster's attention, but it was already too late. It was right in front of the red boar, just waiting for the right moment. He found the beast strange, but deep down, thought it was just a red boar. Then, our hero used the appraisal skill and discovered that the creature was level 62. With this information, he decided that this opponent was perfect to test his new skills. So, all set. He began to unsheath his sword and walked calmly towards that beast. The strong guy, seeing Marin approach nonchalantly, was in shock and shouted asking if the guy was losing his mind. But Marin, ignoring the warning, faced the red boar. Honestly, when the monster prepared to attack, our knight just waited. Then, with an extremely quick movement, he swung the sword in a powerful arc. My young man, he was sliced in two in an instant. Marin landed calmly, while the halves of the creature fell behind him. He was a bit confused, almost unable to believe he had done that. The other passengers, in shock, began to scream. Even Marin was at a loss for words, wondering if it had really been him. One of the big guys grabbed Marin, praising how insane it was for him to have taken down the beast, and asked if Marin was an elf or half-beast because he definitely didn't seem like an ordinary human. No. The others just stared at the knight, paralyzed in complete silence. The big guy patted Marin on the back, thinking that after pulling off a feat like that, he should eat something. He called everyone for a meal, but Marin just stood there, staring at his own hand, somewhat thoughtful. Later that night, the group set up camp and gathered around the campfire. Then, two men started discussing Marin, puzzled by his ways of hiding his face and that his gear seemed too cheap. One of them even joked that the knight's old sword could be a relic, suggesting he should ask the girl. When one of them called out to Maran, he noticed that he was no longer where he was supposed to be. But the guys exchanged confused glances, wondering where that knight had gone. Then they turned around and were left speechless. Maran was dragging the carcass of the red boar to the camp. The girl started yelling, wanting to know what he was doing with that thing. Maran said he wanted a bit of meat, right? Furious, she spun around and told him to go back with that gross thing, but then, sometime later, everyone was eating that soup by the fire. One guy complained that he had lost his appetite and asked that monsters never be brought to the table again. Marin felt uncomfortable. You know how it is, right? With everyone's reaction somewhat downcast, he took the spoon and brought it to his helmet to taste the soup, but it was as if he had choked. An adventurer commented that the soup was fine, but Marin seemed to loathe the taste. A blonde woman looked over, saying it was a great meal for the journey, right? Seeing the knight's pained expression, she began to ask if he really wanted to eat that thing he had brought earlier, and made sure to remind him that, besides being disgusting, the monster could be poisoned. She also mentioned that the rule is to take what is necessary from the monster and teach the rest immediately. The archer, who was also part of the story, said he should eat even if he didn't like it. The men were shouting because they couldn't make the boar's carcass burn. The boar's body refused to catch fire, even with flames. The archer then decided to take action and asked everyone to get out of the way. So, our protagonist was a bit confused. You know how it is, right? Questioning why they called the archer to light a campfire makes no sense. Suddenly, the girl conjured a fireball in her hand, using elemental magic. She cast the spell on the boar carcass, which ignited immediately. Manu was in shock, unable to believe the girl's skill. One of the companions remarked that magic like that is quite useful, and the woman agreed that it's easy to learn. The girl stared at her hand, marveling at her magical power. Then Maran asked if she was from the magic tower. She tensed a bit at the question, and he explained that most wizards come from there, but she responded irritably. The young woman said that even non-mages can do this, but it takes about 3 years to learn. Then, our knight shot back that basic magic is easy for adventurers and curiously asked what era she is from. She gave a hint toward a point on the horizon, catching our hero's attention. High on a hill, the girl pointed to the lights of a city that twinkled at night. Marin was mesmerized by that sight. He had never seen anything like it before. He realized that those lights were magical stones used as street lamps. He was completely awestruck. She started to explain that this type of magic is rare in rural areas, but very common in cities. She also mentioned that nowadays, even children's toys are powered by magic. Wow, Marin remarked from afar, contemplating how much time had passed since it was nothing like this in his time. Near the fire, one of the guys caught a whiff of roasting meat and started asking why it had to be pork. The friend also mentioned that it would be perfect with a cold beer, not after a long day. Meanwhile, Marin continued there in silence, watching that monster carcass burn in the fire. Then the next day, they finally arrived in Adorama and thanked Moran for his invaluable help. The merchant shook the knight's hand, expressing his deep gratitude for the protection, but our hero only thanked him darkly and silently. So, watching the merchant leave, they are left wondering if he really didn't eat anything during the journey. One of them remembers that the young man vomited everything and only drank water. He worries that perhaps he has some kind of illness, right? Since he never took off his helmet. Then, Marin offered a bag of coins as a form of thanks, but he says that this wasn't part of the agreement. The man insists that it's the least he can do, right? And says goodbye, leaving the payment with the knight. When he opens that cloth bag, Marin discovers that in fact, it is filled with potatoes. Wow. He remains silent, staring at that unexpected gift, looking somewhat touched. Next, he leaves the potatoes with a guy who was sleeping nearby and continues on his way. He begins to reflect on everything that has happened. Then, he is finally back in his hometown. He starts walking through the city, wandering, and realizes that the urban landscape is quite different from his memories. Then, at one point, he spots a slightly busy bakery and recognizes the place. From there, Marin knows that his destination is just around the next corner, the place he has always considered his true home. Finally, he arrives at the Rias orphanage, where he grew up with his family. However, upon arrival, he comes face to face with a toy store and is completely perplexed. He wonders if he took the wrong path, but he is sure, right? After all, the orphanage was right there. Suddenly, a guy comes out of the store and asks if the knight needs help. Marin explains that this place was an orphanage, the Santa Rias orphanage, and asks where it went. The owner replies that he is the second owner and has never heard of such an orphanage. But Marin keeps insisting that the orphanage was indeed right here. The man reaffirms that he really doesn't know, right? At that moment, an old man who was nearby calls the hero and asks about the place. The elder explains that he has never heard of it, but knew that it existed a long time ago. Marin becomes curious and asks what he means by a long time ago. The old man then reveals a rumor. He tells that the orphanage caught fire. Wow, this news leaves our Marin in shock. Everything was destroyed during a brutal dragon attack. The scene shifts to a memory of a monotonous life, devoid of dreams or joys. In the midst of that emptiness, the only memory he keeps is of the warmth of a dinner table, the warmth of family that departed long ago. Thus, in a deeply tragic manner, his first and brief life came to an end. He awakens with the sight of a fish, Tank, wondering why the ceiling is so bright. Suddenly, 2 children look at him and excitedly shout that the baby has finally awakened. One of them runs to call for the sister, while the other stays smiling at the newborn. They are confused, as Marin's last memory was of a fatal accident. At that moment, someone approaches and asks the boys not to shout and not to scare the baby. An extremely kind figure lifts them in the air. A smiling nun embraces him and asks if he slept well. She says that, starting from that day, the baby is part of the orphanage family, and this is his first memory in this new world. The warmth of a family he no longer had. In another memory, we see a bag of coins being delivered as a donation to an orphanage. Now an adult, Marin hands over the money, but the nun says there's no need. She worries, realizing that he just returned and is already leaving again, overexerting himself. Poor thing. Our hero chuckles and reassures her, saying it's an easy task, just cleaning up a horde of goblins, right? The woman seems a little calmer but is still concerned about his mission. Before he departs, she asks the knight to make a very serious promise. She implores him to return home before it's too late, promising to make his favorite pie. And then, with a smile, the young man promises he will return safely. Back in the present, a nun leads him to a tree and asks if this is what he was looking for. She explains that there were no survivors from the dragon. Attack in that time has taken its place. The woman begins to ask questions about his relationship with those who have departed, as no one ever visits the silent memorial. Marin kneels before the tree as a sign of mourning and respect. The nun understands the whole situation, apologizes, and begins to step back to give our Marin some privacy. The hairstylist remembers her promise, recalling how she assured him that he would return. Poor guy. Then, with a hand on the plaque, he laments what she said and that there was nothing to worry about. Just a single tear escapes from his helmet as he thinks about what could have been. Marin reflects, wondering if the story would have been different had he been there to face the dragon. So, with his heart in his hand, he kneels over the storm, holding the memorial plaque as if it were his last connection to his family. But deep down, he knows that this doubt will never have an answer. All that's left for this guy is just longing. For him, the only remnants of the family he loved are those trees and the plaque that stands there. Two nuns watch from afar, a little worried. The guy has been there for days, motionless, as if the world didn't matter, imagining his pain. The nuns lament how devastated he must be. Marin remains there, paralyzed, as if time didn't exist. Feeling sorry for the night, one of the nuns leaves a piece of bread by his side. After leaving the food, she steps away in silence, seeing the bread there, forgotten. Then, finally, Marin moves, picking up the bread with his hand, trying to eat. The guy brings the food to his helmet, but what a horrible taste, brother, and he feels nauseated again. The curse that prevents him from savoring anything but food is unbearable. But why does only he feel this way while others eat just fine? Then, in a moment of despair, he realizes that he can't even satisfy his hunger, feeling that pain of loss again. Marin wonders if it's worth living, but then the magic of the world does the unexpected. An incredible aroma wafts through the air. It wasn't just any meat. The scent was insane, much more delicious than anything he knew. This smell makes his mouth water in an insane way. Driven by desire and hunger, he rises and leaves the cemetery, following that trail of perfume. Determined to find food, Marin walks through the streets with a focus that's enviable. Well, that aroma he senses leads him to a dark alley between the houses, and he, curious, listens to the guys talking about burning monster bodies and the risk of a mummy. One of them complains that if someone eats thinking it's regular meat, the answer is ironical. Just throw it away. Well, he sees they are burning a wagon full of monster bodies, and wow, that looks so appetizing. So, without thinking twice, my friend Marin runs over to check it out, but soon realizes what he's doing and goes back to those trees in the cemetery, feeling sad, defeated, and disheartened. Sitting on the ground, he grabs his sharp knife, ready for action. Then, with a monster's box in hand, he looks at the piece for a moment before attacking, and then, without hesitation, Marin sinks his teeth into the roasted meat while finally experiencing an explosion of flavor that hits him like a punch to the stomach. Then, a smile breaks out on his face. The meat is simply delicious, my friend. The taste is better than anything he's ever had until now. That salty, slightly charred meat seems to fit perfectly in his palate. The juices of the meat drip and explode between his teeth, feeling like a dream, you know what I mean? It looks like a picanha. My brother, with each bite, that snack overcomes any meal he couldn't finish before. It's a flavor that touches the most primal instincts as it goes down his throat. But, as not everything is roses, out of nowhere, a strange mark appears on his hand while he devours the meat. A sharp pain pierces through the mark, which starts to glow intensely. Then, with that, the dude collapses on the ground, writhing in pain, not understanding what is happening. Tears roll down his helmet as he sobs, mixing pain and sadness. He apologizes to his family for being the only survivor, but despite the guilt, a desire to live sprouts. So, with a wrong pulse, he declares himself. He wants to live as a human and eat amazing things. Deep down, he wants to be happy, but he wonders if he truly deserves it, because everyone is dead. It's just him there. Then a ray of sunlight breaks through the clouds and illuminates the cemetery, bringing a breeze of hope. In that moment, a green leaf floats down and gently lands on his helmet. A shining hand appears and touches his wound, as if wanting to soothe and caress his pain. He is startled by that sudden and mysterious sensation that crosses his hand, and then the hand disappears, leaving the little green leaf where the mark was. Sitting there before the tree, Marin feels more at peace. He begins to look at the future with new determination in his eyes. Still with his mouth dirty from food, the guy finally seems to have embraced his new path. Then he picks up his shield and his satchel, preparing to move on, bidding farewell to the tree, saying it's time to face the future. Marin swears he won't delay returning home now. He takes the first step on the cobblestone streets, beginning his new journey, and thus starting the gourmet life of this new monster-eating hero. I love a monster eater, especially when he gains abilities from the monsters. And if you like it too, leave a like here and comment. I will read all the comments, okay? Now, a mighty tower rises, the Adventurers Guild. There, all adventurers begin their journeys, this renowned institution. That guild deals with a variety of requests. It's simply one mission after another. Everyone in the guild is in the midst of insane training, everyone trying to surpass themselves, but only the brave succeed. Then an elf in a hood appears, completely focused, ready to face the challenge. The golem, strong and firm, was just waiting for the strike from the new challenger. The young elf concentrates, preparing to throw a powerful punch. Then, with that extremely serious expression, his pointed ears become visible over the green hood. The blow, my friend, is so powerful that it registers an incredible 5,312 points, breaking the record of the day. Wow! The elf is extremely happy. He buzzes with excitement because he left everyone impressed with the size of his strength. That crowd won't stop talking. He came in first, even surpassing a huge warrior, and everyone is wondering where this strong newcomer came from. Then, another adventurer approaches to congratulate him, wanting to form a new team, but the elf, clearly irritated, rejects the guy's boldness. Marin, our protagonist, tries to intervene, but is taken aback by the elf's furious shout asking for space. Our poor boy Marin scratches his head, feeling the embarrassment of the situation, and apologizes. Out of nowhere, a rat officer appears, putting Marin in hot water for not having taken the test yet. The guy, all frustrated, lets out a sigh. Oh man. But Marin is confident about the ease of the test. The elf, now calm, turns to Marin with a relaxed smile and tells him to chill before the test. The elf explains that if the knight is nervous, he won't perform at his best. Then, with a cheeky thumbs up, he emphasizes that compatriots need to help each other and says goodbye. Marin is left all confused, wondering what the elf meant by compatriot. The elf receptionist, Dahlia, greets the elf who passed the test. The young blonde greets her confidently with a smile. She praises his score, but he shrugs it off, as if it were just another day. Dahlia then hands him the official adventurer certificate, and the elf is shocked to see that he only achieved rank D. She explains that to level up, one needs a history, and the elf is clearly impatient. Then, without wasting any time, he wants to head off for a new mission. Dahlia takes a look at the mission board. She finds two perfect options, a subjugation mission and a collection mission. However, the elf, even frustrated with those options, decides to take both. But Dahlia warns him that these missions require a group. He can't face everything alone. She explains that the area is filled with monsters because it hasn't been cleared in years, and only those who are rank B can take the mission. And it needs to be in a team. The elf is now somewhat pissed off and starts looking for companions. Meanwhile, a burly guy is in the background making an annoying laugh, and another one seems even more tedious with each passing second. Talha wonders who he could form a group with. In this place, out of nowhere, a giant object flies in and crashes into the guild hall's counter. The elf is nearly startled by the sudden explosion and the scary impact. A chunk of wood almost hits him. Dahlia screams, asking if everyone is okay and if anyone got hurt. She confirms that everything is fine, but sees that the elf is not okay at all. As they watch, the golem is falling right in the middle of the rubble. The elf questions how a 1-ton golem ended up there. Among the dust, Maran emerges, framed by a huge hole in the wall. He points to the fallen golem, visibly awkward in that situation. Then he bows and apologizes profusely for the damage. Tele assures him that it's all good since no one was harmed and he didn't cheat. The employee now comments that he has never seen anything like this in his entire experience. Tamar offers to cover the damages, and the receptionist starts calculating the bill. She adds the repairs for the wall, the broken furniture, the cost of the golem, and the lost expenses. Then, with a smile, she presents 2 gold coins and 30 silver ones. He takes a look at his pouch and realizes it's empty, without a single cent. She says that he can pay whenever he sees fit, but with a mischievous glance, warns that the guild will take legal action if he takes too long. Now, as an official adventurer, he will have to work to pay off his debt. The elf then approaches and offers to team up with him, leaving Marin shocked by that wink. He says that companions should help each other in tough times, right? Marin, completely confused, wonders what this elf means by that. Upon using that appraisal skill, he discovers that Dahlia is a level 36 elf archer. The elf replies that he will also go on the mission, but Marin, completely suspicious of the sudden kindness, doubts it. She thinks that their combination of warrior and archer is perfect for this mission. She believes that the duo will smash everything on this adventure. Marin is worried. After all, this partnership was formed during a crazy time, right? But the elf remembers that they don't need to rush. The elf reaches out his hand to Marin, introducing himself and saying it's a pleasure to meet him. Marin isn't very excited, but he knows he needs to pay off his debt soon. The receptionist, with a cheeky smile, makes Marin feel the pressure. So, naturally, he had no choice. He had to accept. Thus, he shook hands, introducing himself to his new battle partner. Dahlia, all excited, smiles and says it's time to give it their all on their first mission together. And Marin, well, as much as he tried to avoid it, he feels that the elf seems to be a good guy. Trust me. The receptionist announces that the team has been successfully registered with the guild, but suddenly the elf flinches and pulls his hand back as if he's been shocked. Marin, not understanding anything, asks what's going on. And then the archer, looking like he's seen a ghost, asks if he's really a human. Dahlia, her eyes wide and filled with dread, repeats the question, looking like she was about to faint at any moment. Then the scene shifts. Now we're in a forest where Marin is studying the map like it's a treasure. They finally arrive at the entrance of the gargoyle dungeon to start the mission, and Dahlia is complaining that Marin is just standing there at the front. He murmurs that he doesn't like mingling with humans, calling them a vexatious breed, full of disdain. Our hero, more than ever, reflects that elves are tall, beautiful, and live forever. He also starts to remember stories that they were enslaved. That's why the relationship between humans and elves isn't the best. But he also recalls that the guild receptionist didn't treat him poorly, yet something about her emanated a dark aura, but the night seemed calm. The two enter what resembles a haunted castle, filled with gargoyles watching them. Marin comments that the atmosphere in the dungeon feels like they're in a completely different world. Then, suddenly, he sees a pair of flying monsters and wonders if they are the targets of that mission. The gremlins he spots are of level 18 and turn into gargoyles when they grow up. This is bizarre. Dahlia warns, with human vision, for him to get out of the way and not interfere with the mission. Straightforward, Marin turns around and starts to walk away, leaving the elf confused. Dahlia shouts for him not to ignore her and tries to justify herself. Marin states that he is over 100 years old. An elf, shocked, is left speechless by the revelation of the new partner. Marin begins to suggest that each one take care of their own part and stay out of each other's way. He starts to walk, but Dahlia insists that he prepare himself. Marin dismisses the concern as unnecessary since gremlins are weak. Dahlia is shocked, wondering if a human really has the strength for this. Irritated, the elf accuses Marin of having spied on his information. A gremlin flies by, showing its sharp teeth and pointed tongue. Dahlia continues to shout that stealing information without permission is rude. The elf's fury shows on his face, all twisted, looking insane. Then, suddenly, one of the monsters dives towards Dahlia, opening that giant mouth. Marin scolds, telling that elf to duck. Dungeon etiquette must be respected. Then, with a swift motion, our hero takes down a bunch of gremlins all at once, splattering the creature's goo everywhere. He is irritated by Marin's attitude, and without any remorse, Marin confesses that he saw the elf's stats when they held hands earlier. Dahlia is now slack-jawed, frustrated, not understanding the audacity of that human. Marin, realizing the trouble, proposes a compromise. If Dahlia doesn't like him, she can finish the mission, and they can go their separate ways. Dahlia is irritated by the proposal and tells Marin to stop interfering with the fight. He begins to say that he will handle the gargoyles his way. From a distance, a gargoyle watches the pair, and Marin tells Dahlia to do what she thinks is best. Then, with a snap of his fingers, Marin takes down a bunch of gremlins and starts collecting their eyes in the blink of an eye. That made 49 fewer gremlins, and he is almost there. Marin now thinks that 50 eyes are good enough to complete the mission. Easy. But then he looks to the side and sees Dahlia facing a level 20 gargoyle. The creature is the evolved version of the gremlin, hard as stone on the outside. Dahlia is tired, panting, preparing for battle against the beast. He lunges at the gargoyle with a bow in hand, ready to attack. Marin, watching the fight, wonders if Dahlia will be okay. And so, while Dahlia takes a risk, Marin is there thinking about his next meal. He wonders how he will cook that gremlin meat and suddenly has an idea. The creature looks like a frog, right? And so that's how he plans to prepare it, taking the parts he thinks are edible. He realizes there isn't much meat there, and since there's not much to work with, he decides to make some skewers for variety. He even decides to roast the gremlin's entrails, and thus, the gremlin skewers go over the makeshift fire. And voila, our boy's feast is ready. He thinks it's not bad for a first attempt and prepares to take a bite. Marin digs into the skewer, savoring the creature's meat delightfully. Then, with a smile of satisfaction, he exclaims that the food is delicious. And, believe it or not, monsters taste good. The flavor resembles duck, but with a spicy kick that hits just right. He thinks that maybe a little more sauce could make the dish even better. And there was Marin, happily tasting his skewer in the middle of that dark dungeon. Out of nowhere, a notification pops up saying that he has been poisoned. And well, the guy collapses to the ground, not knowing what was going on, and realizes he can't move his own body. But the worst was yet to come. Marin went for that food that looked delicious, but little did he know that what was truly there was pure poison. And when he realizes this, yes, panic hits hard. With no antidote in sight to save himself, he goes into total collapse, screaming for help. But then, in a snap of the mind, the guy thinks there must be a natural remedy in the flesh of the gremlins, right? So he rolls up his sleeves and rips the liver from one of those little creatures. Imagine the scene, the guy eating the raw organ in a bet with his own life and hoping it works out. Man, that's bizarre, right? No, and then suddenly that message pops up on the screen. Poison neutralized. Phew, that was a relief. My brother, he's finally doing better. He knew he was going to get out of this, but then he gets thoughtful. Wow, this guy almost kicked the bucket because of his own hunger, right? That's why no one eats monster meat, it's just because it's disgusting. At that moment, the elf shows up, and my god, the look of horror and shock on his face at that scene. And he screams all scared, asking what the hell Marin is doing. His expression is exactly as if he'd seen the devil, it must be. A protagonist sitting on the floor, surrounded by monster meat and pots, lets out, "You humans are barbarians. I never thought it would be this bizarre." Marin, all calm, just remembers that he knows you elves are vegetarians. "But that doesn't give you the right to offend someone who eats meat." His response blows up. "I'm watching a nightmare and want to go home already, because Marin is still here. He's already done his part," but Marin calls the shots, saying that since it was on the mission, the two of them have to take care of this. And we trust, right? If everything goes wrong, the guild receptionist could be in trouble. Dahlia is left speechless because really there's no way to disagree. Marin then offers to help hunt the gargoyles to finish the mission quickly, but Dahlia thinks she doesn't need a human for that. But Marin is already ignoring her, and the elf is looking at Marin with that frying pan in hand, confused about what he's planning. The knight said he was once the bearer of the shield and is ready to fight, and then he simply activates the provocation skill, strangely drawing the attention of all the monsters around. The gremlins rush at him with eyes shining with rage, and even the distant gargoyles come to face the challenge. Dahlia, from afar, watching this absurd situation, is in shock. What does a frying pan have to do with being a shield? And he panics seeing a bunch of creatures coming at him. This taunt is the top skill of the shield bearers, used to protect allies. Normally, this is used to divert monsters and give the group a chance to defend themselves. The elf doesn't waste time and calls Marin crazy for attracting all the monsters. And it doesn't stop there. The knight realizes that the skill is stronger than it used to be. He decides to throw the frying pan away and focus on his fighting skills and martial arts. Then, he starts to boost his agility and damage, and the hero takes a combat stance at full speed, ready to face the wave of monsters. Dahlia complains about the mess and thinks about taking a break, but soon she's left speechless by what happens next. Then, with a snap of his fingers, Marin shreds the monsters with insane speed. Man, Dahlia is open-mouthed, murmuring, "Wow, this is a joke, right?" He only managed to hunt 5 gargoyles with great effort, and now Marin is wiping the floor with them. A blue glow starts to surround our knight, and Dahlia can't stop thinking, who is this guy? Before leaving, the elf asks Marin to wait a second to chat. He asks if Marin is up for splitting the loot, even though he did all the work. Marin says he doesn't need to, as he just wants to finish the mission quickly. Dahlia thanks him for the help, still feeling a bit embarrassed about everything that happened. Then the elf starts to walk away, believing in Marin's generosity. Suddenly, an elf hears a strange noise and signals Marin to stop and listen. Marin gets startled because he didn't know that elf ears could actually move. Dahlia, shocked, turns to scold him, but Marin, ignoring him, keeps walking. From the top of a cliff, Dahlia spots a stopped cart with 2 men and an elf. One of the men is yelling at the driver, telling him to swerve away from a servant that crossed their path. Then the guy kicks the elf, calling him a useless, slow slave. The young elf shrinks in fear, poor thing. He starts to apologize, begging them to stop hitting him. And Dahlia simply explodes. He can't stand to see that. He comments that this is why I hate humans. The elf begins to speak, stating that humans always claim they want to end slavery, but in reality, they traffic other races. He could easily draw his bow and take revenge right now, but Marin asks why he would do that. After all, you can't tell if the elf is a true slave just by looking. He also talks about the black market and the emeralds. Marin suggests just reporting the situation. The elf, now completely disappointed, thinking Marin was different, realizes he is just like everyone else. He decides to go on his own and arm himself to confront the men. But suddenly, Marin senses a strange smell coming from the trafficker's cart and realizes the stench comes from the cart carrying the enslaved elves. Inside, a mother elf tries to calm her panic-stricken daughter. Then, seeing the child in danger, Marin realizes he needs to act and fills himself with courage. The crazy guy looked at himself and said, "I'm training for this type of trouble. I need to fight for my people who are suffering." In the next moment, the elf raised his hand and shot an arrow toward the trafficker's cart, and bam! The arrow exploded beside the cart, releasing a cloud of dust and smoke that covered everything. That archer went crazy, completely perplexed by that insane outcome. The explosion knocked the 2 men away, leaving them utterly dazed, not understanding anything of what had just happened. While he was trying to make sense of the situation, a flying sword appeared out of nowhere and embedded itself in the wheel of the cart, immobilizing it. The elf was shocked, asking what that was and why Marin decided to lend a hand. Then, a flashback rolled in his head. He remembered the nun who held him when he was a baby and repeated to himself that he couldn't care about the problems of adults, but he had to do something for the innocent child. One of the traffickers had the expression of someone who saw a ghost. Scared, he told the other to look over the cliff. The 2 adventurers faced the guys, ready to confront anything. Holy Mother, totally messed up. Are you crazy?" one of the traffickers shouted, asking who those two were and where they had come from. The man shouted, "You won't get away with attacking my property!" Furious, an elf declared that he was there to save his relatives who were being enslaved, but the trafficker just smiled, saying they were licensed merchants and that the elves were legal property. One elf was shocked to hear they were working for the house of Marquis Pestal. The guy pointed at the mark on the cart and demanded an apology for the damage done. He called the elves ignorant, claiming they only knew how to cause trouble. Anger grew in the elf's eyes upon hearing such an insult, but Marin calmly refuted that the crest on the cart was not the true one from the Bestal family. The trafficker insisted that the wolf symbol was there, but our hero said that if he looked closely, he pointed to the wolf's eyes on the crest, which appeared normal, without flaws. The ancestor of the Bestal family had only one eye, and this detail was missing from the fake crest. Thus, he made it clear that the symbol was a forgery, since the depicted wolf had both eyes. Wow! Now the traffickers were left without escape and without words in the face of Marin's revelation. He further added that the penalty for impersonating nobles was maximum. Cornered, the chief trafficker ordered his men to attack the duo. Marin paused to reflect that mercenaries generally avoided fighting each other out of professional courtesy, if you know what I mean. Then, he dodged a blow and remarked that it seemed like the weather had changed. Then, with an unrelenting and powerful punch, the knight defeated the mercenary instantly. The guy spat something, and his eyes bulged out with such force from the hit that he fell back. He hit a tree, and as if that wasn't enough, the impact was so strong that the trunk split in two. He fell to the ground, groaning in pain, unable to rise. One of the traffickers was in shock, seeing that giant defeated with a single blow. A leader of the group stood up, cursing those adventurers for attacking them. As the duo prepared for another fight, the man surrendered, terrified at the possibility of being defeated. Later, in a facility, the elven family that Marin rescued was in a mood of gratitude. The elven mother said she didn't know how they could thank them for saving their lives. An elf stepped forward, right? He said he couldn't ignore his people and did what anyone should do. Then he approached the knight and asked if everything was sorted out with the guards. The elf explained that the traffickers were arrested and even his relatives were being interrogated. At that moment, the little elven girl tugged at Marin's cloak to get his attention. When the guy turned around, her mother asked if he was the uncle who saved them. The girl smiled and thanked him, saying that the knight was very kind for doing that. That family then began to say their goodbyes. The girl waved to Marin and his friend, while Marin observed silently as the family left happy and safe. Then, the elf turned to him and blurted out that he never imagined he would say this to a human, looking quite embarrassed. He thanked Marin for saving his elves. He hated to admit it, but the truth was that it was thanks to the protagonist that he saved his people. But, out of nowhere, our protagonist asked that elf for money. Marin began to say that the elf was truly grateful, right? And preferred to receive it in coin form. To him, money was more reliable than words. This drove the elf crazy. The blonde archer was indignant and retorted that he just wanted to express his gratitude for being saved. And in a sudden moment, he threw a pouch of coins into his hand and told him to get lost. An elf then started calling humans pipes, anxious, and declared that he would never trust humans again. The next day, our hero returned to the guild to deliver the mission items. He left the pouches with gremlin eyes and other collected materials. He also complimented the knight, highlighting how he handled the difficult job so efficiently. The woman then handed over the reward for the mission, but the money seemed quite little. Marin thought the reward was quite meager, but she explained the reason. For the discount, she issued it just as per the guild regulations. Your outstanding debt will be deducted from your rewards. Wow, the knight, surprised by that situation, quickly commits to settling his debt as soon as possible. Then, determined, he sets off in search of another mission to try to reduce that hole in his pocket. He approaches the bulletin board looking for new jobs. Thinking about the situation, Marin realizes that even though he needs cash, he suddenly has a craving for something different to eat. One of the available missions was for the honor of stories, but it was full of rock-type monsters. Another option was the orc camp. He had never had the chance to face one of those, and he starts to wonder what the taste of orc meat would be like if it's similar to pork. At that moment, he hears a voice that sounds familiar and comes face to face with the girl he met in the carriage. She asks what he is doing there and if he has now become an adventurer like her. The girl jokes that she thought he had already kicked the bucket, and Marin gets a bit embarrassed, turning red. She apologizes and says she's happy to see him, and decides to introduce her team. Olga is the leader of the group, while Rakate is the mage who accompanies Mickey. She introduces Marin as a strong mercenary, but one who eats very little. She also also boasts that the three of them have been together for a long time and that they make a sharp team. She does not reflect that the group, with 2 archers and a mage, is somewhat unstable. She explains that they have been looking for a tank for over a week and haven't been able to get into any missions. Then, she extends her hand and makes a proposal. Mickey suggests that he join their team as the tank they desperately need. Marin, caught off guard, can't even speak in response to the girl's unexpected offer. The scene shifts to a forest where the new group is in action. A giant green monster charges at Mickey, but she dodges at the last second. The creature is ready to attack again, but the knight blocks with his shield. The orc's roar of pain echoes throughout the place, and the mage casts an explosive spell. The magic explodes right in the monster's face, dealing insane damage. The orc's hand falls to the ground, signaling that the team's victory is imminent. Mickey cheers for the group's synchronization, realizing that they have already taken down 2 monsters today. She comments that since Marin joined the team, the hunts have become calmer. Suddenly, a strange noise makes the group stop, and Olga wonders if it's an earthquake. But then a horde of furious orcs appears, charging mercilessly. Mickey panics at the sight of the enormous number of monsters, thinking that they must have heard the screams. There's another choice. Someone yells for everyone to run for their lives, but Rekat stumbles and falls behind. A giant orc approaches the fallen mage, raising its club to attack. She is frozen with fear, unsure how to react to the impending attack. Her eyes widen in terror as she sees the monster's club coming down, but then everything changes. Marin appears, taking out all the orcs at once to save her. The others rush back and ask if she's all right, relieving the mage. Olga, stunned, reflects on how strong the knight is. The last remaining orc tries to rise and attack, but is riddled with arrows. After defeating 10 monsters, the leader decides it's time to take a break. The girls comment on Marin's incredible strength, recalling how he saved the group. Suddenly, she realizes she hasn't thanked him and begins to look for Marin. She sniffs the air and senses a very familiar smell. Rebecca notices a scent of roasted meat, leaving Mickey feeling very strange since they are in a dungeon. Then, they come across Marin sitting by a campfire, grilling something over the flames. Mickey jokingly says he's the source of that smell and that he should have warned them. But as they approach, they are horrified to see that Marin is cooking orc meat. Mickey asks why he's doing this, as it wasn't part of the mission plan. He invites them to try a delicious orc tidbit. Did they think it would be like pork? But the smell is more of a mix between beef and pork. Marin takes a generous bite and is left speechless upon realizing that the taste is truly incredible. With each bite, it explodes with juiciness in his mouth, and everything is just right. The girls, on the other hand, look on in disgust while he indulges in the enemy's meat. He thinks that next time he'll season it better, with salt and pepper. Then, with his fork in hand, he admires the orc steak, convinced that it can't go wrong. This guy starts to really enjoy that simple seasoning, and the smell of pepper fills the air. The girls watch him in disbelief, unable to comprehend that he actually likes the food. Mickey gestures to keep the others away from the knight, as if afraid of him. Marin thinks the team is done for, but then realizes he can use the orc meat in other recipes. Suddenly, Olga appears and puts her hand on his shoulder to strike up a conversation. She mentions that she's heard of places where people eat monsters out of necessity. Mickey assures him that he won't kick him out just because his taste is a little different. Then, at dusk, the group sets up camp, and Olga says it's time to unwind. The next morning, a huge, swollen orc appears out of nowhere, but Marin, standing firm, shows he's not afraid. The giant orc charges with his club ready to smash everyone, but Marin calmly defends himself with his shield. Later, the sorceress watches the protagonist cook, an expression of disgust on her face. Suddenly, the ground around the campfire gives way, creating a tremendously tense atmosphere. Olga, suspicious, asks Marin why he sleeps alone, and he replies that it's definitely much calmer that way. Mickey, on the other hand, seems lost in a sea of thoughts. Bitter, with a grateful smile, she wished everyone good night as the night settled down to sleep. The sound of the crackling fire enveloped him like a blanket. During his deep sleep, Marin began to dream, flashbacks from a distant past. In the dream, memories of an old group laughing at a priest. One of them asked why that guy went to fetch firewood when the fire was already lit. Marin fondly recalled the warm smile of one of his old friends, but soon a booming voice called out his full name. Tearing his dream apart, he sat down, somewhat confused, and found his team around him. Then, with serious expressions, one of the companions questioned why everyone was awake if it wasn't their turn to stand guard. Then, one of them pointed to a shiny object and told Marin not to move. The mage warned that the spell was ready, and that it was better for him to answer the questions that were about to come. While he was asleep, the group decided to use an evaluation stone to determine Marin's level. Mickey, in shock, pointed at him and exclaimed, What did you just see? The screen lit up, revealing that Marin's level was unknown, but he had a sinister title, Relative Slayer. In light of that revelation, the knight fell silent, with nothing to say. The title was a synonym for having defeated over 100 of his own kind, and to make matters worse, it granted a 5% attack bonus against individuals of the same species. Wow. Mickey was horrified and questioned, "Did you really do that to over 100 people?" Looking critically, he noticed that Marin probably didn't have a criminal record, but that's a story for another video. Look, but what angers me the most is that you made it this far, my brother, and didn't like the video. Hit that hype button. Then, pressured by the team, he was asked why he wasn't saying anything, if he was with them with bad intentions. The knight, in a gesture of capitulation, simply apologized without giving any justification. Seeing this, Olga said that it was impossible to ignore what had happened, regardless of his strength or diet. The group leader, in a firm decision, began to declare that he could no longer trust someone with such a heavy history. Determined, he demanded that Marin leave the group. He also understood the gravity of the situation, and thus the knight got up, ready to leave without causing more chaos. He gathered his belongings, preparing to leave the team behind. The scene then flashed back to a forest 100 meters away, where a globe of red eyes was lurking, with fury etched on its face. Young Marin, with red hair, fought against two monsters at the same time. An archer from his old group celebrated as the goblins fell into the trap. With pinpoint arrows, she took down both monsters at once. After that fight, the bodies of the goblins covered the forest floor. The leader of the group smiled and asked if everyone was okay, if anyone had been hurt. She praised the archer for the skill in taking down two at once. A companion remarked that there were still 18 left, but Marin joked with him, calling him a talker for not having fought. The leader ignored the taunts and asked if everything was organized. She also called for Charlotte, and Maran said he was ready to continue the journey. The group complained about the receptionist and the lack of goblins. They speculated that the monsters might be hiding, retreating deeper into the forest. Then, a colleague made a joke about it, but Marin, alert, felt that something was very wrong. He tried to get his friend's attention, but no one was paying attention. Suddenly, the whole team turned to him, their eyes glowing with an empty red. Frightened, the young man found himself surrounded by gazes, asking why he had done that. A voice questioned why he was the only one to survive the attack. Without further ado, Marin woke up from that nightmare, screaming in fright, "Damn!" The guy was sitting on the bed, panting and shaken by the terrifying memory. He got up and looked out the window of the facility where he had spent the night, on the second floor. His gaze caught the frantic activity in the hall. When he descended, he noticed that everyone in the tavern was watching him. People were whispering among themselves, asking if he was the guy from the news. One of them exclaimed that he was the killer who was attacking. A newbie was shocked to see him in the guild. Marin thought that the rumors had spread, and that people always exaggerated. He then decided to ignore them, right? Because he couldn't do anything. He went up to the counter where the receptionist had news. She congratulated him, announcing that he had now been promoted to rank C. Spotting a harpy mission, he immediately imagined fried chicken. "My brother, that guy only thinks about eating." A nearby voice suddenly called him greedy, and Marin was taken aback. It was Dahlia, the elf he had met before. Well, that greeting was quite sarcastic, wasn't it? The blonde archer commented on the rumors, but Marin ignored it and took the mission. Irritated, Dahlia yelled at him, and a beast girl asked if this was the human Dahlia was talking about. She turned her nose up at Marin, full of confidence, and approached him with a mischievous smile. Then the elf stepped forward, introducing the girl as the leader of the new group he had just joined. That woman introduced herself as Emoda and said she had heard of him, but Dahlia interrupted immediately. Our hero observed from the side, noticing that the girl had the look of a martial artist, completely based on what she was wearing. So he began to use his appraisal skill. He saw that the girl was level 59 and was a priestess. Marin was left speechless, thinking he must be seeing things, as priests are support characters, and she didn't seem saintly at all. The guy explained that he was hunting a non-human group and happened upon her announcement. The woman said she had heard rumors in the guild and made a suggestion to the elf. At that moment, Emoda stated that she accepted him because, despite being human, he carried the title of Killer of Kin. Wow, our boy was completely confused. He simply asserted that he had no idea what she was talking about, and the elf laughed as if it were a joke. The beast girl extended her hand and called the human to join the team. He hesitated, but the woman teased, "Do you have another choice?" He looked around and noticed that the people in the guild were whispering about him. With no other option, he agreed to temporarily join the group for the guild's mission. Dahlia got all excited about the guy's decision and gave that satisfied little smile. The leader warned they would test his skills, and Marin asked where. Then, with a firm look, that girl pointed at the mission poster, shouting that they were going to the Harpy dungeon. Already in the dungeon, two creatures with red eyes charged towards them, screaming loudly. The new team prepared for the fight, and there, he gave the order to take down the creatures. Our boy stared at the monsters, thinking that having flying enemies was quite a challenge. He becomes thoughtful, wondering if he can reach them by jumping, but one of the arrows whizzes past his side. An arrow hits the harpy, energizing him. He thinks having an archer on the team is a great triumph. Dahlia declares that she won't let a human steal her prey and tells the hero to move aside. That other creature screams and dives headfirst to attack the group, while Emoda shouts for the knight to raise his shield. The beast uses the new colleague's shield as a springboard, and then, with insane momentum, Marin charges with all his strength toward the flying monster. In midair, the girl descends with a heavy fist into the harpy's face while in flight. The impact is so absurd that the creature is knocked down instantly, and they land on the ground smoothly. She praises their synergy, but Marin asks her to give him a heads up next time. The knight reflects that having partners in battle isn't so bad. After all, they've already taken down 3 harpies. The leader decides it's time for a break. But while cleaning the area, Marin notices something strange between their legs. Then, out of nowhere, a pink and fluffy creature appears holding a harpy feather. He calls the creature a country bumpkin and asks if it has ever heard of living dolls. The little one explains that they are pet golems powered by mana, and that one over there, is a limited edition, my friend. The elf praises the golem for completing the task of cleaning up the feathers. The blonde archer adds that these little critters don't even need to eat and can help in battles. Emoda teases, saying that he thinks these cute things look like real babies. Noticing Marin's gaze, the elf feels embarrassed and slightly apprehensive. The guild leader shouts that it's a golem and that Marin is forbidden from eating it. The elf mentions that they are lucky to have captured nearly half of the harpies. Then Emoda questions Dahlia about why he hesitated to introduce Marin to her. Suddenly, Dahlia notices a wonderful smell of roasted chicken coming from somewhere. The elf notices that Marin has disappeared, and the leader gets angry at whoever is cooking alone. Meanwhile, Marin is there, cutting the harpy's meat to prepare his new meal. Well, this guy has already seasoned it with salt and has the frying pan warm, ready to cook. Marin fries the meat, thinking that the crackling sound of food never gets old. Then, with a divine shimmer, the harpy's meat is ready. Mono notes that it looks like chicken and takes a bite to check. He is delighted by the explosion of flavor. The texture is indeed similar to that of chicken, but the taste, well, is much more intense and savory. Out of nowhere, his companions come running, shouting for him to stop immediately. He tries to offer some, but the girl screams that she's not angry because he's hungry. The woman is crying, and the alpha declares that this is the most horrendous scene he's ever witnessed. He tries to argue that the face of a harpy is not like that of a human, but the group doesn't want to hear it. Talia laments having witnessed something so cruel, while the group leader starts salivating. The beast is in conflict. It's a monster, yet it looks incredibly delicious. She refuses to look at what she considers a great blasphemy. Then with that, Marin attempts to offer her a piece, but the girl immediately refuses, grimacing. And he says it's a shame since it's delicious and the smell, well, it really tempts her. Then the woman asks for the head with temptation. The elf tries to calm her before she attacks. Suddenly, the woman lets out a scream about the aroma, and Marin, our hero, remembers the other dish he was cooking. He grabs the skillet aside and warns, "I overcooked it, but it's done, right?" And there it is, shining as if it were a divine relic. The roasted harpy leg is ready to be devoured. Motan is shocked, questioning how he is going to devour those legs, but Marin replies without looking at her, "I've always wanted to try it, and I don't care about your opinion." Then the guy takes an exaggerated big bite out of the leg. Wow, this is the moment of pure culinary epiphany for this guy. The meat is as tender and sweet as pudding, an explosion of happiness on the palate. He thinks that a sauce would pair very well with it, and decides to take the rest home as if it were treasure, right? Seeing all this, he vents, saying he can't relax with a knight nearby. Marin then casually asks what he's eating, and offers a piece, but out of nowhere, the elf screams in panic that the claws are poisonous, and Marin collapses in a mix of despair and disbelief. An elf asks the girl to use a healing spell, but the girl replies that she doesn't know how to do that because she never learned those tricks, finding them a drag. At that moment, another harpy appears, drawn by the noise, and the elf doesn't hold back, blaming the girl. Then, with a determined expression, she responds that he should step aside to see the new spell she learned. In an act of boldness, the young woman conjures a fireball the size of the world, incinerating everything in its path. Dahlia is devastated. The spell caught her golem off guard, and he was only a week old. As the smoke clears, she is the only one standing, while the others lie on the ground, unconscious. Curious, the elf steps forward and complains about the precious golem that has been ruined. She apologizes, but the situation is tense. He vows that he will never forget this catastrophic day. Meanwhile, Marin reflects silently on all the chaos that just unfolded. Back at the guild, the receptionist accepts the mission items with a huge smile on her face, as if she had won the lottery. The group leader asks to get rid of the fox meat they brought. Terrible idea, right? The exhausted elf laments that the day was mentally heavy, and the girl offers him a new golem, but of course the knight appears with the monster's claws, startling the receptionist. She questions why he brought that, and Marin simply says that throwing it away would be a complete waste. Then the girl suggests he put it in his backpack, but Marin makes a questioning face, like a little question, right? Not understanding what that is. He then remembers something similar and quickly opens his inventory screen, revealing 30 storage slots. How could this guy forget about that? He realizes that he has been carrying a bunch of unnecessary weight. My brother, that's why everyone kept looking at him with that stare. What a weird face, my brother, he realizes, bringing his hand to his head, shocked by his own lack of memory. And man, stupid my brother, worried about his mental state, is interrupted by Emoda, calling his name and asking how the mission went, praising how well they worked together, right? He agrees, still a bit dazed. You know how it is, right? Then the leader extends her hand and invites him to finally be part of the group. Marin shakes her hand, and it's a celebration. Now they are a real team. He reflects that having allies is much better than running around alone. Finally, Marin accepts the proposal, and the girl reacts with a shout of joy. She says she will register them as a guild group and runs off. Our hero realizes how much has changed, and that they are now officially companions. It's a crazy journey, but Dahlia, with those steady eyes, corrects him, stating that she's counting on him for the rest of her short human life. Then he thinks of Charlotte, saying he hopes to count on her too. A silence engulfs the moment as he officially greets his new teammates. That girl comes back all excited, announcing that the group registration has been completed. She shows the paper with the group name, and they are both astonished to read what was written there. Then, with a radiant smile, the leader exclaims, "Look at this! It's the name of our team! It's the mess team! Ha ha ha! What a name!" The elf panics and starts to talk. Who registered him in this ridiculous group? What a horrible name. She explains that she heard Mar mumbling the word and found it quite funny, you know? Identifying with that vibe, and the elf, protesting, continues, "I can't believe all our achievements will be tied to this pathetic name." Meanwhile, Marin ignores that discussion, thinking about going back to his room to devour that meat. In this atmosphere, the girl interrupts him, asking where he is going, and he says he is heading to his room without dramatizing. From there, she decides she will throw a welcome party for the new member of the group. Later, in the tavern, the team toasts to the success of the mission and to the new member, inviting everyone to eat and drink freely because the night is still young. Dahlia keeps grumbling about the name, but the leader insists that the registration is final and cannot be changed, right? The elf, already irritated, gets even more stressed. Our hero focuses on the delicacies in front of him, unable to eat anything, but eventually gives in and takes a bite to avoid seeming rude to his friends. Italy makes a disgusted face at the food, while the knight agrees that everything is as bad as always. And then the leader changes the subject. The girl, now a bit tipsy, reveals that the group's plan is to become a rank. Marin asks why, and she explains that everyone has their personal reasons. She tells that adventurers can rank up by passing these tests, but achieving the rank depends on the knowledge and recognition of the guild based on strength and accomplishments, and the content of the exam is a mystery to almost everyone. She begins to talk about her goals, but Marin is so distracted. Poor guy. The girl reveals that her younger siblings are still in bondage, captured by humans. She remembers that a guy promised that if she gathered the money in 3 years, he would free them. She explains that the only way to free them is by buying their freedom, and Marin at that moment gets confused upon hearing the word revolution, with no idea of its meaning. They both are stunned, like, how can this guy not know about such a significant recent event? This is surreal, man. So he decides to explain that this whole thing was important, honestly, in a simple and direct way. He starts revealing everything that, over the centuries, humans had enslaved other races for very obscure and sordid reasons, and his family was indeed on the list of those captured, exploited, and thrown into the mud by humans. They were locked up in cells, with no chance of escape, being used to satisfy everyone's selfish desires. Many of his race simply withered away, losing strength and even hope in that darkness, and anyone who tried to escape, my friend, only a cruel and terrible end awaited. Tired of so much oppression, several races united to form an alliance against humans. This was the beginning of the new revolution, which humans called the War of Races. They demanded a number of things. One of the most relevant was to end slavery. If humans did not comply with the demands, it would be total war, without mercy or pity. In the end, humans yielded and signed a peace treaty among the races. Thus, the races that once lived, hidden, began to emerge, and now it's normal to see them around. The girl explains that because of this treaty, they can be adventurers, and that's why she turned to that area. She wants to make quick money to free her family from that miserable situation. Then, the curious knight turns to that elf and asks what he has to say about his own story. The boy reveals that his dream is to be the elder of the forest from which she comes. His family has always protected the forest for generations, and that is his mission, even though his older sister is not keen on it. The pressure to take on this role is heavy. The blonde archer clenches his fist, stating that he would be much better at the task of protecting the forest, but then gives a piece of advice. He has decided that to prove his worth, he will take on the role of elder. Therefore, he has to be an adventurer and level up. After all, this This is crucial to achieving his goals. Marin thinks that everyone there is in the struggle with a very strong reason to seek success. The elf points out that they would be happy if Marin joined them in this mission. Then the group leader directly asks, "And you, human, what is your choice?" Marin recalls that tree in the cemetery and his lost past, which continues to haunt him. His companions realize that his silence is heavy and say he doesn't have to open his heart if he doesn't feel like it. But our hero, firm in his resolution, says that perhaps he has found his purpose in all of this. He starts to talk about having a dragon and that he thinks about taking it down. Everyone is left speechless by this revelation, asking if he really said dragon. He explains that it's the same one that attacked the village Dorama and turned the village into ashes. He adds that when something he needs to do for real comes up, that's when he'll push himself. Marin reflects that they must think he's just messing around, right? But out of nowhere, the elf gives a big smile. He comments that human ambitions are even greater than his. The girl, full of grace, asks if he intends to go inside the dragon and calls the guy insane. Then, the elf adds that leveling up is also part of his plans to come back with more information. So, with their goals aligned, the three make a toast and decide to give their best together. The next day, the sun shines brightly over the city as the new team gears up to start their new journey. Marin decides to take it easy, preparing a hearty meal for everyone. But suddenly he realizes he's broke. After paying for the room, fully aware that oil is expensive, he prepares the frying pan to start cooking. Then, he uses his storage skill and pulls out the meat he saved. A blue light shines in his hand as he checks his inventory. He is taken aback to see that the raw meat is there, perfectly intact. He realizes that this inventory is a game changer for storing food. The first thing he does is break eggs to prepare the batter. Then, he coats the pieces of meat in breadcrumbs. As if he were a master in the kitchen, he throws the meat into the hot oil, and the sizzling sound fills the environment. Our hero is smiling, thinking that the sound of food frying is music to his ears. He turns the pieces to prevent them from burning, and fries them again until they are golden and irresistible. The fried harpy thighs are ready, and he thinks they turned out great for a debut. Ready to taste it, the knight takes a big bite of the fried thigh he made. It turned out really crispy, and the meat is quite juicy, a perfect combination. He thinks the taste reminds him of meaty crab, which only increases his happiness. The more he eats, the more he wants. Pleased that he made enough for everyone. Suddenly he hears Thalia calling and knocking at the door. The elf is complaining that it's past noon and told the guy to open that door already. Marin opens. The blonde archer asks why he is wearing a helmet again in the room. Dahlia says it's because of an urgent matter, but Marin was already in the middle of his meal. The elf only mentions that there's a sinister problem concerning the group's leader. Marin invites him in and asks what's going on. Is it really important? Seeing the plate of food, the archer freaks out, asking if Marin is cooking again, but he quickly composes himself and states that the priority is the girl, not the food. The elf then asks the knight to keep it a secret and begs to borrow some money. Oh no, he gets confused, not quite understanding what's happening. Then, with the face of someone who has seen a dragon, Dahlia reveals that Imotar was deceived by her human master. The elf immediately remembers the girl's sad situation. He decided to dedicate his savings to help free the sisters from slavery. The pause our group took was meant for them to go there, but things didn't go as planned. The master broke his promise and was preparing to auction Imota's siblings. The elf claims that the human only wanted to toy with the girl's feelings, completely manipulating the situation. At that moment, she asked him to stop, and he went crazy, saying he would only cancel everything if she managed to gather the money he demanded in 5 days. The price was 10 gold coins per head, totaling no more, no less than 20 coins overall. When the knight, who was always attentive, calculated the sum in his old currency, he concluded that the ransom was insane, about 2 million nens. The elf, with a shrewd look, explained how the proud girl begged to save her brothers. And then, our hero asks if he came to collect that money for the group's leader. The blonde archer commits to returning every coin, but the knight doesn't care. He doesn't trust the crazy guy, and doesn't have the money. Poor him, he gets tense, remembering that her siblings are just little kids. Marin, noticing the emotional play, tries to reflect on it, but the elf says he is just stating the reality. The knight then questions what the elf would gain by lending money. But it's just silence, my brother. The guy doesn't say anything. The archer finds himself in a bind, without answers. He then tightens his fist, as if questioning whether this would be the only possible way out. And out of nowhere, he leans in and whispers something to the human, asking if he has the wind attribute in his affinities. After all, the element, as it is explained, is like the essence of magic that each person has, which defines with which element the person performs best. The magic that aligns with one's own affinity consumes less mana and is undoubtedly stronger. This is something that typically comes from birth, and most people have only one, but in some cases, twins are born with 2 affinities, even more, and they become magnificent mages. The elf then, with a determined look, makes a proposal to Marin. He promises to grant the blessing of the spirit of the wind if he lends a hand. Marin is skeptical, questioning how someone can simply distribute an attribute like that, and the elf, already out of patience, shows himself to be desperate. The zealous warrior swears by the forest and asks if he now believes in him. With not much to think about, the knight ends up accepting the deal and stands up to put everything into practice. He warns that it is time to go, and the elf, somewhat relieved by the decision, agrees. The two say goodbye to the inn and start walking through the city streets in the morning. That blonde archer raises the question of how they would manage to make that much money in such a short time. The guy reveals the strategy of hunting in a high-level dungeon and selling whatever items they manage to get. This shocks Marin because the guild strictly prohibits entry into dungeons beyond its level. The knight, unafraid, says he is aware of the rule, but there is no other way to get the money in time. That guild doesn't deal with games, and penalties for offenders are heavy. Fines, suspension of missions. Any adventurer caught could even lose their license and be out of work. Furthermore, he explains that these dungeons are quite far away, and it would take a considerable amount of time to get there. The round trip could only last the mere trifle of 4 days, and that is a much longer time than they have, right? He then teaches how the elf is scheming a way to get money to help their friend. The archer Lojo, or used, reveals that he was going to use his own savings. By the way, Marin asks if he really has anything set aside, hidden. Then he stares and asks if Marin doesn't have anything saved for a day of need. The elf suggests selling an item, but our Horacio recalls that he has nothing worth selling. So he opens his inventory looking for something that could fetch some cash. Amidst his things, he ends up finding a pair of earrings that seems to be the only viable option. Then, they both agree to gather everything they can and arrange to meet later to sort out the money issue. The scene changes, and we see the orange sky of late afternoon, with leaves falling from the trees. A hooded figure sneaks through a dark and abandoned alley in the city, hiding behind some crates while watching a brighter shop. The shop owner asks what the figure wants, and the figure approaches the counter in silence. The mysterious person reveals that they have something to sell, and the merchant responds that he buys a little bit of everything. With that, the protagonist gives his found pair of earrings and places them on the counter. The man, quite surprised, comments that he should be selling that in a jewelry store, but soon recognizes the jewel and is left speechless. The guy shouts that these are shards of the Pleiades, very rare and almost impossible to find around here. Marin explains that he received the earrings as a gift from an old acquaintance in a mansion full of Lucios. Meanwhile, the merchant prepares to meet his captive, thinking he might profit from the situation. When he finds the girl, he tries to calm down, but the guy mocks her attempt to resist. He states that the last 3 years were just a whim, and asks if she enjoyed the freedom she had. With hatred in her eyes, the girl replies that she wishes she could tear him to pieces. Then, suddenly, she hears a familiar voice calling her name and turns towards the door. The leader of the group is completely perplexed upon hearing her friend's voice. At that moment, Dahlia and Marin enter the room, and the girl lets out a sigh of relief upon seeing them. She wonders why Evo brought a brother along, and he clarifies that Marin helped. The blonde archer assures her that he will explain everything later, but right now what matters is the money. He introduces himself, saying they came to pick her up and pay for her siblings' ransom. Wow, that girl is in shock, thinking about how she accepted his help, even though he is part of the same team. Then, the master, in a mischievous way, made a joke asking if the rank C adventurer could really gather that much money. But that was until he saw that Mars' 20 gold coins were all genuine. The girl, with fierce determination, demanded that the man release her siblings, but he merely flashed a sly smile. The master, all smug, claimed that the contract stated she had to gather the money on her own. Dahlia was left speechless, unable to believe the guy's audacity. The loophole in that logic was absurd. Annoyed, she recalled that, by law, family money should be accepted. The guy was now cornered. The master shouted for his men to bring the slaves and their identification documents. The girl thought that without the elf's help, she would be completely lost. The master's servant returned with her 2 younger siblings. The shy children entered the room, and the girl rushed to hug them. She squeezed them with all her might, asking if they were okay. The little ones only nodded, tears in their eyes. The older sister apologized for taking so long to rescue them. Marin, observing the scene, noticed that the children were very thin. Furious, he clenched his fist, outraged that they had been going hungry. The servant handed over the original identity documents to the master and announced that he was getting rid of that situation, terminating the agreement. The girl then invoked her magic and incinerated the papers, freeing her brothers. With a bright sparkle in her eyes, she burned the servitude documents forever. The master declared that, although the brothers were free, she was still his slave. Then, with a smug smile, he threatened the group. but Marin stepped firmly in front of the girl. Marin said that he would also buy the leader's freedom. Everyone was stunned by the knight's attitude and his unusual proposal. That girl protested, saying she didn't need help, but Marin ignored her and asked the master the price of her freedom. Well, the man just laughed, saying that, unfortunately, she was not for sale. He explained that she was already listed for today's auction and that he could not cancel it. Then they took it, and the master suggested they participate in the auction, bidding for the girl, and the leader was confused, questioning why no one had mentioned that she would be auctioned. Dahlia unleashed her anger against the master, accusing him of lying shamelessly. Then, with a side smirk, the man asserted that selling slaves was his legitimate right. Samuel, outraged, called the man a scoundrel, but Marin calmed him down. He said that the blonde archer was behaving immaturely and needed to think better, and Marin continued explaining that the auction was nothing more than a strategy to torment the girl. He announced that they would accept the auction, which surprised the woman. Maron asked her to wait, assuring that he had a plan. Turning to the master, he stated that every child needs a guardian, recalled a woman who lovingly cared for children in an orphanage, and also remembered a man caressing a child's head. Then, he approached her and said that this also applied to her. He recalled the nun, saying that every child deserves protection and also a purpose. He warned that she was the only one capable of caring for and protecting the children, and he emphasized that saving her brothers was not the end and that she could not abandon them. With tears in her eyes, the girl agreed, willing to give his plan a chance. She warned that if he faltered, she would never forgive him. Dahlia encouraged the leader, asking to trust the plan they had for later. After they leave, the master turns to the girl with a sinister look. He taunts her, questioning if she really believes those two could save her. The group leader glares at the man with disdain, clutching her arms tightly against herself. He then grabs her by the neck, claiming he does not intend to sell her. Heck, the guy, still with a mischievous smile, says she will not be able to escape, coming back crawling, but the girl meets his gaze with a defiant and hopeful look. The man then orders his servants to prepare the team in support of the merchant there for the night. The auction begins with the mansion lights shining in the darkness of the city. The first item is a criminal slave, with an opening bid of 4 gold coins. Marin and the elf watch the auction in silence, waiting for the right moment. Dahlia mentions that the average price for a beast man is between 8 to 9 gold coins. Marin, helpful, watches as the bidding for the human slave continues. The auctioneer then announces the next item, a wolf woman, in the distance under the spotlight. The slave gladiator, Mota, appears for the crowd on stage. Mota thinks that the master must have used some dirty trick. She clenches her fists, knowing she needs to warn her friends, but feels powerless. The auctioneer announces that she is young and more resilient than any human. The master watches everything with a satisfied smile, seeing his slave finally auctioned off. He laughs, believing the adventurers have already burned through all their cash and cannot help her. Then, with a mischievous air, he treats them like children and doubts they can win her. Suddenly, a man in the audience stands up and says he won't let them win. The auctioneer then announces the opening bid. 6 gold coins and 30 silver, just to start, right? The same guy from before raises his bidding paddle, making the first bid for the goalkeeper. The elf is furious with that guy, wondering why he wasn't quicker to place a bid earlier. Since the end of the text was cut off, I have included the entire text as per your request. Please let me know if there are any other changes or if you need more help. Thank you. Then, out of nowhere, another guy shouts a bid of 20 gold coins, leaving everyone in shock. The girl, quite terrified, simply stands there dumbfounded by such a huge amount, believing that they could never afford something so expensive. Despair takes over her as the blonde asks if there's any bid higher than 20. Dahlia panics. The average price was much lower and the bids skyrocketed at an absurd rate. Marin then raises his sign and places a bid of 21 gold coins. Damn. The auctioneer now asks what the bid limit is, and the guy clarifies the rules of the bidding. And then the knight raises his sign again and bids 50 gold coins. The elf, incredulous, asks how he has so much money, since he had said he only had 10. Damn. The guy is dumbfounded, unable to understand how a rank C adventurer has so much gold. The auctioneer is also furious because, damn, 50 gold coins is the maximum of the auction. Then, a crowd in the audience starts to whisper, doubting he can actually afford such a high price. The auctioneer states that house policy requires immediate and full payment in cash, and the elf starts to get desperate, questioning where the knight is going. In the midst of the auction, Marin, determined, steps onto the stage, and the auctioneer begs him not to do that. Then, under the golden lighting, our hero approaches the girl who is kneeling on the stage. The group leader freezes at the sight of gold coins falling around her. Marin then uses his ability and spills a mountain of gold onto the stage. Then, with a serious look, he asks if that is sufficient payment. For her? Damn. Now the master is in shock, not knowing how the rank C has such an absurd amount of gold. A huge pile of coins forms on the stage, and the girl is left speechless. The auctioneer shouts that the slave has been sold, and the girl is in complete shock. Later that night, the siblings reunite in a room at the inn. The two children rush to embrace their older sister who was waiting for them, emotional. She says she is so happy that they are finally safe. The elf then asks why Marin didn't mention he had so much money saved before. Looking on with a smile, expressing relief that everything worked out in the end, Marin turns to leave, but the group leader calls out to him, looking very embarrassed. She thanks him for saving her life and also her brother's. She says he saved her family and then has no idea how to repay him. Then, suddenly, one of the children smells meat, and our hero eagerly invites them to eat. The girl asks the elf how they can repay Marin's help, and he responds that our hero only helped because they are his compatriots. The leader suddenly catches a strange smell coming from Marin and becomes a bit confused. The archer quickly realizes the situation and in a panic tells the knight to stop, but it's too late. Marin turns around, confused, with a plate of food in hand. One of the girl's brothers asks for a piece of the fried chicken that our hero made. The children go wild, saying it's the best thing they have ever eaten, and the leader shouts, demanding to know what he is giving to the children. She says fried chicken is not a problem because they have strong stomachs, but then asks what kind of chicken it is. Marin responds that it is harpy meat, and the girl freaks out. My brother! Wow! Is this guy really giving harpy to the brothers to eat? She tries to make the brothers spit it out right away, but they insist it's too delicious. Then, not backing down, the older sister grabs a piece and prepares to try it too. Wow, that girl is in shock, not believing how tasty it is and wondering if she is dreaming. Then, in a dilemma, she prepares to eat another piece of the meat. She thinks that if she faints, the children will be scared and stop eating. Feeling nauseated, the leader comments that she would rather be defeated than eat a disgusting monster, but she closes her eyes and takes a huge bite of the harpy chicken. Then, upon tasting it, wow, that girl is left speechless in total shock at the incredible flavor. The elf wonders what is wrong as she starts shaking. He becomes worried, asking if she has been poisoned, but the girl screams that the taste is wonderful. And the brothers ask for more. She exclaims that she has never tasted such tender and juicy meat in her life. Marin, smiling, tells her it's good, and she becomes all embarrassed and flushed. The leader insists that it's not good. It's that she will never forget this humiliation. Then Marin turns to the elf and reminds him that he still owes him a debt and demands 90% of the earnings until he pays back those 70 gold coins. The blonde archer, well, that guy started to freak out, calling Marin a heartless scoundrel for charging so much. Alright then, with that deal sealed, Talha gives his friend the reward he promised. The like on this video, bro. You made it this far and didn't hit the like? You must be kidding, right, bro? Smash that like button and don't forget to share the video. Got it? So that night, the two young men ventured into a forest, and the knight questioned the reason for choosing this place. The elf commented that the city is not the best place to perform the ritual, which is why they decided to come here. Then, he asks Marin to take off his gloves so that the blessing can flow perfectly. Our hero, in a swift movement, removes his gauntlets, preparing to receive the spirit's power. It's then explained that elves are born with the blessing of a spirit that establishes their magical bond. This spirit is a lifelong companion, and when granting its blessings to another, it can only do so once. Talha mentions that the knight is his savior, and has already fulfilled 2 of his greatest wishes. Then, with a firm gesture, the elf begins to summon the spirit of the wind to release Marin's blessing. Suddenly, a gust of wind envelops our hero, and he feels a powerful wave approaching. Though he cannot see it, he perceives the spirit's force coursing through his hands. Talha explains that humans stole these blessings, using pain as bait, quietly taking the sad story of his friend's people, and the elf highlights that they carry lasting memories, and still suffer from these traumas. Did you see how the green area around Marin feels the pulsing blessing in his hands? The blonde archer expresses his disdain for the humans who caused such pain. Then, with an intense shine in his eyes, he transfers the spirit's blessing to Marin. At that very moment, the knight receives the power of the wind in an explosion of overwhelming energy. His status screen updates rapidly, revealing the new affinity with the wind attribute. But Dahlia, filled with distrust, confesses that she still hates humans. Granting a blessing does not mean he has forgiven humanity. The next day, the group gathers at the guild, ready to celebrate the beginning of a new journey. Their leader, with an excited and cheerful expression upon seeing that the knight has finally arrived for the mission, explains that they have found a non-human babysitter to take care of their siblings. The girl celebrates her first day as a free citizen, full of enthusiasm, with a radiant smile. She introduces the new mission related to the Crystal Cave. The elf is perplexed, realizing that the mission takes place in an extremely dangerous swamp. Marin reads about the monster and wonders if the mud tastes pleasant. At Marin's expression, the blonde archer wonders if he really plans to eat mud. This guy eats everything. My brother, never take him to your house. The elf asks about the other monsters, and the leader says they will explain that on the way. She mentions that after the mission, she needs to find a place for her and her siblings. Upon arriving at the carriage point, the group encounters an extremely luxurious vehicle. The girl asserts that she didn't ask for that she can't pay for it either, right? Suddenly, Suddenly, a figure in a skeletal armor appears and greets them. A familiar voice echoes from the carriage. It's the girl's former master, and now it reveals to be the leader. Recognizing the voice, she is shocked to find her former master. The man steps out with a smile, saying he didn't want to arrive late. Marin asks what he wants, and the man replies that he has missed her. Then, with a challenging look, he says he is there to make a proposal and suggests that the babysitter be returned, which takes Marin completely by surprise. The knight turns to him, his whole body shaking with anger at the absurd proposal. The elf becomes furious, stating that the matter has already been settled and that the agreement is closed. The master laughs, advising the girl to stop looking that way. She warns that her guards are experienced and that they cannot be stopped. Marin then steps forward and addresses the man by his full name. The master offers 100 gold coins for her return, but our hero refuses immediately. The guy is now extremely surprised and cannot understand that refusal. The elf explodes with rage at the master's audacity, calling him a villain. The master then raises the offer to 150 coins, but Maron refuses again. Moda places himself between the two, shouting that he wouldn't sell her even for 100 million gold. The man, sarcastic, offers 200 coins, thinking he could get away with it. Wow. At that moment, Moda desperately reacts to that offer, begging Marin to ignore it. Just then, the man who handled the paperwork says that Marin was just joking. He clarifies that the documents were completely destroyed, making the young woman a free person. Marin warns that if he disrespects the girl again, things won't end well. The master, consumed by hatred, calls Marin pathetic and ethereal for acting so courageously yet recklessly. He said he thought he could resolve this with money, but he wouldn't give up on her that easily. In light of this, Alpha takes a stand, asserting that she will have to be taken by force. Suddenly, the master receives a powerful punch to the face and is knocked back. Moda screams that he couldn't stand hearing him anymore and decided to end this silly talk. Amid a red aura, the girl screams that she is no longer his slave, demanding respect. One of the skeletal knights prepares to attack the girl, but Marin interrupts him, warning not to draw his sword so recklessly. Then, Marin grabs the skeletal knight and throws him to the ground with tremendous force. Wow. Seeing the guy's reaction, the other guard becomes furious and readies his bow to attack. Marin then crouches down and picks up a small stone from the ground to defend himself. With the agility of a true ninja, Marin throws the stone with such force it seemed like a sharp blade cutting through the air. The little stone hits the guard squarely, who, wow, is left dumbfounded. He spat something before falling to the ground in defeat. The master, full of curiosity, demanded to know Marin's level, and he, with a calm demeanor, revealed that it was 95. The girl was left speechless to learn that Marin was so strong, and the elf, with a corner smile, was also surprised. She then grabbed the master full of determination, saying that they were not finished there. Suddenly, a scream of pain cut through the air, echoing down the street. The attentive elf quickly warned that they were late for the carriage and needed to get out of there. That girl, stretching with satisfaction, said that she had already fulfilled her mission and that the man was now unconscious. She stretched, satisfied, and told him never to show up there again. The master, lying on the ground, threatened that they would regret this when they informed the merchant guild. With a dark aura, he whispered that the fame preceding him made it difficult to find a new team. Then, he let it slip that taking down the merchant guild was much easier than finding new partners. So, without thinking twice, Marin delivered a powerful kick, destroying everything around him. The man's courage shattered quickly. He was devastated by the force of the blow. Marin then warned him to know his place, and that, well, was a small demonstration of his total power. The scene then shifted to a crystal cave, where a purple glow illuminated everything. Inside the cave, an elf shouted that the monsters were weak against fire and asked someone to light a torch. The girl, full of ideas, acted quickly, but Talha panicked my friend, pleading for her to stop, but it was too late. Nay, Moda unleashed a colossal fireball that incinerated everything in its path. The elf complained that she needed to practice this skill more, nay, while the girl smiled, saying she hadn't had time. Shortly after, Marin prepared a meal that looked extremely strange for a change, nay, disgustingly so. Are you crazy? His friends, still surprised, asked if he was really going to eat that. The elf commented that it looked too bizarre. What do you think it looks like, huh? Are you crazy? The knight then raised the spoon to the helmet. Among the anxious and curious, he noticed that the food had no smell. He concluded that the taste might be different and decided to try the strange food. The taste, well, it was horrible. And the texture. Are you crazy, my brother? The texture was worse. So, with the mix of clay and gum chewing in his mouth, the guy got desperate and decided it was better to finish off the scraps of harpy chicken he had saved. Suddenly, the girl called out to him, thanking him for saving her family from slavery. Marin relaxed, said that payment wasn't necessary since he had hands to feed himself, but she was still worried. She questioned how he managed to get so much money and if he had gotten into any trouble, right? Because the guy appearing with a rain of gold coins is very strange. Our hero then denied everything, assuring her that it was nothing like what she was thinking. He also revealed that he had sold a memento from an old partner, which shocked her. She was concerned as even if he paid it back, he would never have that item again, right? Then, with a determined look, the woman faced the knight and told him that everything was under control. He explained that they were his companions, and that the best way for her to repay him would be to stay in the group. The elf agreed, praising that she was doing a great job as a leader, making the girl blush. Mota, all enthusiastic, said he would strive to do his best, and questioned about the blessing the elf had given him. He explained it wasn't a gift, but the payment of a contract between the two. The girl asked why he would give the blessing to a human whose true face he had never seen. Then she approached him, trying to peek under Marin's helmet. She asked if he had any scars, but the elf warned her not to be so nosy. The blonde archer, in all his wisdom, said that the friend was hiding too much and should open up more, but Marin, in his own world, remained silent, processing his buddy's advice. Out of nowhere, a shine appeared on his helmet, as if he were about to do something grand. But before he could do anything, the creature attacked, hitting him with its crystals. His companion stood paralyzed, shocked, not knowing how to react to the beast's unexpected assault. That creature, a type of lizard with a shining crystal tail in the darkness of the cave, was hit in the eye and let out a scream of pain. The girl acted like a feline, jumping over the monster to deliver a final blow. After defeating the beast, she turned around worried, asking if Marin was okay. The elf, quite alarmed, asked the knight to lift his head so he could see our hero. He held our friend's face and shouted that there were crystal shards in his eye. Marin, touching his helmet, realized that he had indeed taken a hit and felt the sting of the cut. He warned that his vision was fine, but the archer shouted that he was losing too much blood. The girl then ordered him to take off his helmet immediately so they could see the injury. She warned that if his eye was hurt, they needed to go back as quickly as possible. Suddenly, Manu remembered two adventurers screaming desperately in fear of a monster. In her memory, she saw an old companion running terrified through a forest. Back in the present, the knight shouted for no one to touch him, leaving his friends confused. The elf, intrigued, asked if he really refused to show his face, no matter what happened. Marin, with his hands on the helmet, replied that yes, looking very troubled by the situation. Then he began to panic, pleading for them to stop and not look at his face. His friends insisted they needed to check the wounds before anything else, but our hero stood firm, assuring them he was fine and that his vision wasn't normal. He argued that he knew his level and that a level 30 monster couldn't cause such a severe injury. Thus, he assured them he was really fine and that they could proceed with the mission. Marin's friends looked at him with that face of someone who wasn't buying the story that he was okay. Seriously? Does anyone believe that? The elf exclaimed, "Dude, you're talking too much. Stop exaggerating, man." The girl, trying to redeem herself, apologized for thinking about taking off his helmet. Marin, feeling somewhat bad about the shouting, also apologized for yelling like that. He was already back at the guild, and the mission was marked as completed, and look at that, the money was in hand. The curious receptionist asked if there was any trouble during the mission. The girl, all nervous, just shook her head, but didn't seem very convincing. She approached him with that worried look, asking if he was sure he didn't want to take a leap in time to heal. The elf casually suggested that everyone take a day to relax right after this mess. Then, suddenly, a panting adventurer burst into the guild, shouting that there was an emergency. Things got crazy. He went straight to a girl, asking what the trouble was. The woman replied that there was a new amorphous creature attacking in the forest near the capital, and Maran became thoughtful, as if he had matched the idea. She screamed that the name of the place where everything was happening was Adrian's Flower Garden. His group thought it best to let other teams handle it and return to the inn, but Marin was thinking differently. "Unless you also want to get involved in the subjugation, I have something more relevant in mind," Marin whispered. "Is he looking to cook another creature?" The scene shifted to the lush forest, under a blue sky on a sunny day. Several teams were gathering, ready to listen to the guild's instructions about the new mission. The two adventurers commented that the first one to find the amorphous creature was defeated, and that there were two bosses involved who were triads. Then our knight couldn't hold back and started thinking about how he could cook those plant monsters, but the girl hit the brakes and warned that if he ate in front of everyone, the group's reputation would go down the drain. He confidently responded that since elves were vegetarians, he would prepare a special dish just for Dahlia. One of the organizers confirmed that the gossip about the two bosses was true. This put everyone on high alert. Out of nowhere, a knight in golden armor appeared, reassuring everyone. "There's nothing to worry about. And that was how he introduced himself as Ankama, the first hero of the scene, ensuring the safety of what was to come. The elf grew irritated and questioned how Marin didn't even know what a hero was these days. He explained that this title was given to those who fought against the Demon King and served the people, but it came at a price. Despite being recognized, many feared the emergence of heroes, as their presence was a sinister sign that the Demon King could resurrect. Because of this, they were treated as VIPs and were generally well regarded. Taking a look at the system, he saw that the hero had various dungeon conquest titles. Talha, with an intrigued expression, commented that he had seen this hero before and revealed that, out of the 5 that were found, only 3 were still very much alive. The second was gone, and the 4th had gone to the dark side because of a monster in a dark forest. Marin was lost in thought about all this, as if recalling something important. Then, out of nowhere, a swarm of giant bees appeared. I walked towards the adventurers to join the fun. The elf, already on a mission, prepared himself, and with his bow and arrows, started shooting at the winged creatures, hitting with precision. He brought down some monsters with his green energy arrows. That girl also put on a show, delivering a powerful punch to one of the bees, showing off, and the knight did not lag behind, taking down enemies with extremely fast sword strikes. The onlookers were commenting that the team was way too strong. Those guys were absurdly skilled. Meanwhile, the reputation of the rich girl was spreading, but the elf focused on the mission. The plan was set. The hero and the rank B team would handle the bosses, while the others stayed in the back. But then, one of the bosses, Trias, level 58, appeared with all his power and created an extremely tense atmosphere. The rank B team seemed to be struggling, and one of them complained that he was feeling like a true lone wolf. The hero, engrossed in the situation, started to fight against the monster, asking them to hold on for a moment. Then, with his shining sword in hand, the young blonde prepared a final blow and, in a brutal attack, he sliced the beast in 2, taking down the dungeon boss. In that moment, the other adventurers were stunned, staring at the hero as if he had performed magic. Then, with a beaming smile full of confidence, the young man found himself and started to boast about his victory. But at that seemingly epic moment, the other boss roared furiously at the loss of companionship. The adventurers only commented on the noise, unaware of the trouble brewing, and then, the creature transformed into a darker and much more powerful version than before. It attacked, without warning, grabbing one of the adventurers and making her scream for help. They realized it was a trap, a crazy scheme. Indeed, Morphia had several bosses, but to defeat them, they would need to take them all down at once. The beast evolved, and its level rose to 70, and tension took hold of everyone. The elf looked around, confused about what was happening, while Marin shouted for everyone to retreat. At that moment, the Ariel felt the same sense of surprise, realizing that the creature was far beyond what he had anticipated. He decided to buy some time, asking the others to flee as quickly as possible, but the beast's vines were trapping them. The blonde warrior, witnessing that sequence, called Marin a complete incompetent nuisance, and it was then revealed that the tough guy had bought information from the Thieves Guild about this new Morphia. He admitted that he had lied on purpose, making the others trust blindly, without investigating or caring a bit about the E group's fate. He walked toward the monstrosity with a big grin on his face. The young man prepared for the fight, declaring that it was time to put an end to this like a true hero. But with the snap, the creature cast a curse, rendering him powerless for 10 seconds. Confused, he wondered what that was. My brother, he hadn't heard anything about such a skill. And as if that weren't enough, the monster launched him into the air with such force that there was no time to defend himself. And to wrap it up in a bizarre way, the monster smashed the ground with a devastatingly powerful strike, battling against the vines that trapped the blonde hero. It thrashed around, believing that cutting everything would be the easiest way to break free. But, in that moment, the beast decided to attack our hero, who was completely immobilized. Along with a brutal blow, he felt the force of the impact, and his vision went dark momentarily. The other adventurers, witnessing the scene, fell into a state of panic and started running like crazy. Marin realized that if this continued, things would get even worse. He saw the creature charging at the others. It was time to jump into the fray. With his sword shining, he wondered how much he needed to hold back his power. Facing the colossal monstrosity, Marin decided that he could no longer restrain himself. Without further ado, he delivered a swift and precise strike, slicing through the beast with his gleaming blade. The attack was so insane that a wave of blue energy devastated everything around. Several trees were cut in half, truly showcasing how powerful that blow was. When the dust settled, a notification screen appeared before Marin. The message, well, Well, it's said that he had earned the title of Conqueror of Adrian's Garden. The others escaping in shock, while he pondered over this new achievement, a girl came over and congratulated him on the feat. But the elf made a sarcastic comment about him showing off, right? Manu felt uncomfortable about it, not knowing how to respond. The other adventurers approached, very grateful for him having saved their lives. They called him incredible for defeating a boss that no hero could conquer. But soon after, they started whispering about the rumors that he ate monsters. Upon hearing this, his companions glared at the group with anger. The girl exploded in rage at their ingratitude, while the elf went further, shouting whether that was human nature. She told them to get lost, and Dahlia asked for salt to ward off evil. Meanwhile, one of the adventurers appeared to help the fallen hero. The blonde warrior was furious and couldn't understand how the rank stripped him of his title as conqueror. Filled with hatred, the hero swore he would never forget Maran's name. Thus, back in the city, the group settled in for a well-deserved rest. Inside, Maran began preparing the triad flower and collected, not the moras. He carefully cut it so as not to damage the inner core. Then, with a knife, the knight extracted the bioluminescence, the monster's core, to cook. Those seeds were enormous, the size of a fist, resembling wild chestnuts. On the way back, they encountered a sick person and took the chestnuts he carried to make the recipe. He began to peel, rubbing off the shells. After that, they boiled them in hot water until they softened. The peeled chestnuts cooked in a pot surrounded by bubbling water. While they cooked, the protagonist mixed water and sugar to make the syrup. He raised the mixture until it boiled vigorously, allowing it to reduce until it formed a thick syrup. Once the chestnuts were tender, he tossed them into the syrup. Covering everything with the spoon, Maran drizzled more syrup, ensuring they were well coated. After the entire process, he let the chestnuts cool and repeated that operation about 3 times. The chestnut glaze was finally ready. The knight added his creation, pleased with the result. Then, without thinking twice, he brought one of the giant chestnuts to his helmet and took a delicious bite. Upon tasting it, wow, he was surprised by an explosion of flavor. The syrup made everything sweet and complex. He thought something so delicious should not be savored alone and wanted to share, right? The elf, even reluctant, eventually agreed to do the same, since it was night and Marin was insisting too much. So, with reluctance, he took a big bite of the chestnut. Upon tasting the sweet, the elf was left mouth agape at the intense flavor. He couldn't believe that the fruit from a monster could be so sweet and soft, perfect in essence. Marin asked if everything was okay, but the elf, somewhat embarrassed, said he wasn't used to it. He asked the name of the dish, and the knight replied that it was called brown glaze. Talia thought it was strange he had given his own name to the dessert, but Marin had a very plausible explanation. The elf said that his master had taught him to control his appetite, even to limit desserts. He further commented that this master was quite strict and was the captain of the forest guard. Instantly, Marin grabbed his wrist, speaking the name of the master. He described her vividly, an elf with ebal sight, pink hair, wielding a water spear. The elf was stunned by that revelation and wanted to know how Marin knew all of that. But Marin only asked if they could go to his forest the next day. The scene shifts to that vast Izura forest on the central continent, home to colossal trees. Marin walked through the forest as if he were looking for someone from the past. He remembered that Master Dahlia was the best friend of a sorceress from his old group. He also recalled a mission with an elf wielding a spear, a rather rare sight. Marin found it surreal that the same elf was the master of his new comrade in arms. Now he only wondered if she would still remember him after so long. And suddenly he spotted a pink-haired elf, becoming shocked at recognizing her. The elf turned towards him, staring at him with a gaze that missed nothing. It was serious and intense. Then she began to assess his appearance, as if searching for something. Then our knight managed to stop wondering if she was looking for him out there in the woods. "I'm in charge!" The elf got straight to the point, cutting off any possibility of nonsense. "Ha ha ha!" Without further ado, she demanded he say his name. That's when Marin introduced himself, but in the heat of the moment, he abruptly corrected himself. "That's right, folks." He recalled that his real name was Charlotte, the elf who dared to be his old friend. A smile bloomed on the elf's face, as if some memory had hit her hard. Finally, she remembered. She let out a laugh upon realizing it had been many years since anyone called her Charlotte. Then, with the joy of finding an old friend, she asked how he was. The knight felt relief at seeing that she remembered him, but before the wave of nostalgia ended, she stepped forward with her spear ready to ask who that guy really was. The elf accused Marin of pretending to be her friend, in a trick in the middle of the forest. "Look at the level of the trouble, my brother." She explained that Charlotte was human, and that 100 years had passed since their last meeting. Then, with a firm expression, she demanded he tell her how he used to call him. At that point, Marin paused, as if trying to calm down or recall those memories, you know? You get it, right? Quite distant. It was then that he had a flashback. A young red-haired boy referred to him as Mr. Charlotte, and the kid was all excited, in wanting to be his squire. "Dude, you're so cool, man. I want to be part of your group." But our hero wasn't feeling that vibe and dismissed him with that disapproving look. "Kid, no chance." The elf joined the conversation, and that's when the suggestion came up that he should meet more people. This blonde young man, all stylish, called Marin Mr. Charlotte in front of an elf friend. Rose, visibly irritated by that human's obsession with her kind, made a gesture like, "Seriously, my brother?" And the knight, fully prepared, thought about rebuffing his friend. Back then, in a memory, they were holding hands, introducing themselves just fine. She found the name Charlotte too pompous and decided she would call him Cha. Back in the present, our protagonist reveals that her nickname stuck, and the elf could barely hide her shock. Check this out. She found herself wondering if he really was Charlotte. The soft voice was the same, but the guy didn't seem to have aged. Marin also remembered he was around 15 when they last met. He even recalled she had a sorceress friend who thought her sweets were a real hassle and always received letters, but quickly cut that conversation, sensing he had already dug up too much information. Then Rose analyzed with a serious look, a mix of distrust and hope. You know how it is, right? Then she thought, the same guy but without an explanation for why he hasn't aged, right? So, with that, she came to a verdict. He was indeed her longtime friend returning after a century, and winking she invited him, then letting me know that she needed to check some information, the important things in the elf's cabin. The reflection of Marin's helmet shone in the glass. She apologized for not having anything to offer, but he was smooth. "It's all good, my brother. You can relax." While they exchanged ideas, Maron asked if she lived alone, and Rose said that it made her mission as a protector of the forest easier. He didn't waste time inspecting, noticing that she didn't seem to have aged a day in 100 years. The right question came out. "Why is this guy wearing that helmet, brother?" The knight only replied that he had his reasons, not wanting to go into more details. And in a quick turn, Rose asked him to show his hand, trying to unravel that mystery. Upon taking his hand, it became obvious that he also hadn't aged. Time seemed to have stopped for him. Then the realization hit. He asked if Carlos had also held up, with sadness written all over his face. But then, Rose revealed that not only Carlos, but all the others were gone. She was the only survivor of that group. Marin understood, of course, realizing that after a century every human would have passed on, and the elf, with a heavy heart, confessed that she had thought all her friends had kicked the bucket. She spoke of her adventures and how, after venturing out, her contact with Carlos was limited to letters. But after a while, silence came. The mercenaries Carlos had worked with disappeared, and after some time, her hope ran out. In the end, it was more confusing than happy, and she wanted to know how Marin lived without aging. But then Marin called Rose by name, getting ready to tell that true story. He recalled the item she had managed to get when they were together, the skills book Arachnophobia, which they received from the Spider Queen Regina Arena. Rose remembered that he was the only one to identify the item, and that he was a great help. Placing his hand on his chest, the knight emphasized that this item was, in fact, one of the reasons he was still alive, and with a somber expression, he revealed that it was also the reason why his former companions were gone. The scene lit up, traveling back 100 years in time to a lush forest under a sunset. Marin's group was facing a horde of goblins with red eyes, extremely furious. Marin blocked their fierce attacks with his shield, solid on the front line. His companions were in panic, unsure of what those creatures were. The leader then shouted for Charlotte to hold the line, while the others prepared to attack. The knight planted his shield into the ground, deciding that he would protect everyone. The group's archer positioned a glowing arrow, about to cast an area spell, and thus, a rain of light fell, eliminating several monsters at once. The leader called for Carlos, and the wizard confirmed he was ready to cast his fire spell. A frantic wall of flames enveloped the goblins, burning everything fiercely. Their screams echoed, a wail of pure misery, and when the dust settled, the ground was covered with the bodies of the monsters. But the knight soon felt that something was wrong. The archer, clearly irritated, said that her client had lied, and the area was full of strange creatures. "Let's go for the feat," one of the guys suggested, but the leader remained firm, and knowing this was no joke. It was clear from her somber expression that the information they received was completely off. Another companion followed her reasoning, agreeing that the situation was becoming critical. Out of nowhere, a hooded figure appeared, complaining about the damage to her creations. The archer stepped back, and the knight immediately moved in front to protect his partner from the mysterious being, realizing that the situation was wrong. And she tells everyone to prepare for a fight. The figure presents herself as an adventurer and warns that the forest is off limits to outsiders. That figure implies that they have angered her, and everyone is shocked to realize they were used as a test. With her hands on her hood, she states that they interrupted a sacred ritual. When she throws back her hood, her true form is revealed, a creature covered in lizard scales. The knight wonders what race that is, and the feeling that something is wrong grows. He activates his appraisal skill and nearly falls back, horrified to discover that it is a dragon. In a protective impulse, Maran throws himself in front of his friends. Maran is thrown against the tree by the creature's brutal strength. He collapses, injured, while his companions shout his name in worry. The dragoness mocks, saying she will use them as offerings for her rituals. The leader shouts for everyone to prepare, asking that Demay take care of Charlotte. The creature, with a sarcastic smile, taunts, saying that even insects must understand who will kill them. She introduces herself as the Golden Dragon, the apex of draconic intellect. The mage is horrified by this, and the leader warns everyone to stay sharp, because she is truly powerful. Carlos, realizing the gravity of the situation, decides they need to get out and prepares a spell to blind the dragoness. But just as he buys time, a claw pierces his chest, and the mage collapses without a chance. Damn, that was spot on! The archer shouts her friend's name, while the dragoness scoffs at a human daring to use magic against her. Enraged, the young woman fires an arrow, but the dragoness dodges effortlessly and retaliates, attacking the group's leader. In an instant, she falls into shock, barely able to understand that she just got attacked. And in the blink of an eye, reality becomes clear. A dragon wields devastating power, and they are in extreme danger. Looking around, the leader sees her fallen companions, barely able to stand. She thinks that the creature in the demon's territory could be their salvation, but they need time. The priest decides to attract the dragoness's attention, creating a gap there. He confronts the beast and questions what a dragon is doing in a forest like this. With a malevolent gaze, the dragoness reveals her dark desire, the resurrection of the demon king. She explains that, as a golden dragoness, she had a vision about the future of this world. To purify everything, the plague called humanity must be completely eliminated, and the demon king, who dedicated his life to this cause, had realized this before she did. The dragoness, in a confessional impulse, admits that she has fallen in love with the powerful king and wishes to be his queen. With shining eyes, she proclaims herself the golden dragoness who surrendered to love for the demon king. Then, in a burst of adorable madness, she introduces herself as the saving dragoness and gets ready to attack with full force. The priest considers her insane, but her ramblings give him precious time, and he is about to conjure the healing in the area. Trying to save everyone for a smooth retreat, but without warning, the dragoness strikes and brings him down. Her claw pierces his chest. The leader screams his name as the creature laughs at him, mocking the idea that he could stop her. Irritated, the warrior lunges at the dragoness with her sword ready to avenge her comrade, but the dragoness, with a clever claw, creates a blade of purple energy to defend herself. In a surreal and swift movement, she defeats the leader, who collapses, unable to rise again. The dragoness laughs madly, claiming they fall like insects, and threatens the others as her future lab rats. Marin knows there is no way to win. If he does nothing, they will all be exterminated. In this desperation, he remembers the skill book, believing he could use it to open an opportunity. A reddish glow shines in his eyes as Marin activates the skill Arachnophobia. A message appears notifying that his debuff, the simulation, has started on his body, but shortly afterward, the message changes, stating that the debuff has been dissipated. With that, Maran internally questions what happened and wonders why he didn't turn into a monster. But soon, horror takes over him as he gazes at a severed arm falling to the ground. Disoriented, he reflects on the bizarre scene he witnessed, while the clear sky suddenly transforms into a full moon night. He glimpses a skull hanging from a giant spider's leg and, seized by panic, turns his head, trapped in a wave of absolute terror. And then the craziest realization hits him. Marin understands the terrifying truth. He has become a monster, a mask of human and giant spider. The protagonist wakes up in the midst of a dense, dark forest, stunned by the devastation around him. When he looks at his own image, shock overcomes him as he sees his own appearance. At that moment, a system message appears stating that he has been designated as the relative slayer. The guy panics, wondering if he is the one who exterminated all those innocents. Fallen on the ground, he notices the glowing hand of a saint, an object that alters status patterns. He wonders if this was the artifact that healed him and brought him back to reality. The knight recalls that the side effect of his ability, arachnophobia, was assimilation. The realization hits. He truly lost his reason and only woke up because the artifact canceled the effect. For now, Marin feels an immense relief at having regained consciousness and sanity. Looking at one of the bodies, he discovers it was the hero who was slain. An uncontrollable terror invades our hero upon realizing he has extinguished the only hope of humanity. He remembers his companions. The last memory he has is of the battle against the dragon. With fixed gaze, he tries to piece together the puzzle. On the ground, he spots his friend the wizard's broken staff and concludes that the worst has indeed happened. Facing his reflection, the knight realizes he has become a true monster, and then back to reality. The guy comments that when he regained consciousness, around 100 years had already passed. He He laments having taken the lives of his friends, something he couldn't tell anyone for a century. Feeling his pain, the elf puts her hand on his shoulder and says it must have been difficult. Rose comforts him, stating that no one could replace him, as he risked everything to save everyone. The protagonist apologizes for the heavy topic, but Rose assures him that she now understands his survival. He then recalls that she had asked him about his helmet and begins to explain everything to the elf. In his hazy memories, everyone who saw his face called him a monster and fled in terror. For this reason, upon waking, he deactivated his ability and thought about seeking a temple to purify himself. With all this, the protagonist was afraid to show his face without first checking his appearance. Rose asked if he had told this story to Dahlia, the knight, affirms that he hasn't. Marin fears that revealing himself to his friends would end badly when they see his face. The elf advises that instead of looking in the mirror, he should show his friends first. She explains that what frightens him is not his own face, but rather the reaction of others. Then, with nervous hands, the protagonist admits that he still doesn't fully trust his companions. In response, Rose places her hand over his and asks if they are not truly his friends. She asserts that one day he will need to trust them, just as they trusted him. In silence, our hero reflects on his friend's words and replies that he will try. The elf smiles happily at the answer, saying it's great that he's willing to try. Changing the subject, the knight asks why Dahlia sometimes calls him Marin. He reveals that it is the name of the dessert he made, and the elf freezes upon seeing the jar. The scene flashes back where a marker asks for the protagonist's name, not knowing what to say at the moment. He introduces himself as Maringlass. He explains to Rose that he changed his name out of fear of being wanted. Then he asks what he has been up to, and talks about his new friends and how Dahlia has improved. Rose smiles, saying he seems happier now, and that even the elves have changed over time. Before leaving, the two greet each other and he promises that he won't take long to return. He says goodbye as the knight waves and walks away into the forest. Rose thinks that her friends trusted him more than anyone else. She knows that now the rest depends solely on the protagonist and his own decisions. Maringlass wonders if he will ever have the courage to show his own face to the new friends. Walking through the forest, the knight reflects on change, questioning if he can change his life. At the inn, under the night sky, the city lights shine brightly. Suddenly, Motara bursts out in anger, declaring that that damn hero is unbearable. The knight and the elf enter the room, and the girl greets him, saying he has returned. Our hero brought roasted chestnuts, and Dahlia asks if they are the same ones he made before. She inquires about what happened, and the girl begins to recount her day. At the guild, she explains that the hero took all the missions she wanted and accused her of breaking the rules. With a dark aura, she tells that she rubbed the proof in his face to show her innocence, but the hero laughed and pretended it was just a mistake. Curious, the girl admits that just for being human, she already wants to beat him up, but he is even worse. Then the elf speaks up that this guy is following them around and causing trouble on purpose. With a cartoonish look, the girl observes that the hero is underestimating the knight. Sensing the mood, our hero quickly realizes that they are not the only ones bothered by the actions of that hero. He is shocked to discover that the stranger is causing chaos wherever he goes. At that moment, the girl's brothers appear, and the knight watches in silence. Out of nowhere, one of the creatures grabs a handful of chestnuts, and the rider shouts frantically for Maringlass to stop the mischief. The little ones are ruining the food, but the kids are excited about the treats, and the beast cannot resist, devouring a chestnut it found delicious and super sweet. It tries to make them spit it out, but the little ones insist that they are doing just fine and want more of that delight. Talha sighs, commenting that the hero won't be around forever and that strangers always end up becoming heroes, right? Our protagonist, curious, asks about that hero story, and Dahlia confirms that he was the fourth in the lineage. But the protagonist gestures and corrects, stating that he was referring to the second hero who was eliminated. He suggests that the current hero might have made the second one disappear, as he seems more than capable of that. Got it? The elf, however, dismisses the idea, saying that Ant-Man is a bit childish, but lacks the boldness for such a feat. Dahlia remembers his immature vengeance and comments that you can see it in the way he acts. You get it? A knight asks who might have been responsible, and Dahlia says that in the official version, it was all a mistake. Right, but in the dungeon, the blonde archer expresses excitement, informing that this is not the official version, but there's a rumor going around. He leans in and starts to drop a rumor to the protagonist, who listens attentively. The elf, with a serious look, reveals who the true culprit behind the downfall of the second hero would be. Then, the scene cuts to the body of the fallen second hero on the floor in a luxurious dark hall. You can see the third hero, who is witnessing everything from the shadows. Our hero is taken aback by that revelation, but Dahlia quickly cuts the mood, saying it was just a rumor and that there is no evidence. He comments that on the day the second hero died, an enormous thunder struck the capital. The strange thing is that it was a clear sky day, without clouds, leading many to think it was something artificially caused. And the third hero was the legendary Lightning Mage, which is why he is the prime suspect. However, due to his unbearable personality, no one approached him. He was the only hero who was not adored. Got it? The elf says that the official version talks about a clash against assassins, but most buy into the rumor. Annoyed, the girl breaks free. She has never seen a decent hero, and if she crosses paths with that anchor again, she will tear her hair out. Changing the vibe a bit, the protagonist realizes that the hero boasts several first-class titles. The elf explains that to be considered a hero, one must have at least one first-class title. The beast then concludes that he is satisfied with the new candidate and wants to monopolize the titles for himself. The knight deduces that the hero is provoking because he believes he stole the dungeon title from the dryad. He wonders why he would have a problem with more candidates, since that should be advantageous, right? The children then eye the pot of chestnuts, and one of them grabs one to eat without a second thought. Annoyed, Moda shouts at her siblings, demanding that they stop making a mess immediately. Gosh, our hero. All he does is stay silent, clasping his hands and reflecting on what Rose had told him. Her words were hammering in his mind, reminding him that one day he would learn to trust his comrades. Watching the family gathered, the knight realizes that secrets do not stay hidden forever. He is fully aware that the day to reveal the truth is not far off, but the fear of what might happen still looms over him. He wonders if his friends would accept him, even with his monstrous appearance, or with his gaze somewhat lost in the stars. Maronglas admits to himself that he doesn't have the answer. 3. Scene abruptly cuts to a dark, damp dungeon, where the team is preparing for a new mission. Suddenly, a level 39 mutant slime launches a surprise attack, and Moda is startled. The elf is terrified, thinking it was a normal monster, but in fact, it was a quite dangerous mutant. Our hero doesn't waste any time and activates a new skill, enchanting his sword with a fiery power. With the blade ablaze, he charges at the grotesque slime. His friends notice that the slime is different and begin to wonder if this is a sign of the Demon King's return. The protagonist has a nagging feeling, thinking that if it's true, they might encounter that dragon again. Meanwhile, he can't help but worry, as his new companions are much weaker and afraid of failing to protect them. Then, out of nowhere, he shouts for him to dodge and throws himself in front of a friend to save him. Our hero takes a direct hit, but it's enough to protect his comrade from the attack. The elf yells for Moda to ramp up the attack, and the beast warns everyone to back away, preparing her fire magic. She unleashes a giant fireball that hits the mutant slime and causes an explosion. After the battle, the group leader asks if everyone is alright, and suddenly realizes she was hit by a piece of slime. Dahlia, already looking like she wouldn't let it slide, gives the protagonist an earful, asking if he was really thinking about stuffing himself with slime again. The hero is surprised to notice that his friend is injured, but Dahlia quickly says it's nothing serious. With a clenched fist, the knight feels guilty, asking why he exposed himself like that. Look at that. Even the elf looks a bit confused, not understanding the question while the girl starts to heal the injury with her magic. Our boy comments that someone shouldn't get hurt on a low-level mission and that his role is to protect everyone. He keeps insisting to know why the archer took that risk, but the elf simply says that he had a hunch, explains that even though he's human, he's his companion, right? And he couldn't let him get hurt. The knight, in silence, processes these words and everything that just happened. Then, as they head back to the forest, the beast girl notices that the knight has been acting strangely since he saw his master. The protagonist, somewhat distressed, apologizes for what happened, and Dahlia asks what went on between him and Royce. She tries to get closer to ask, but he pulls away and remains silent. Suddenly, the elf hears a strange noise and warns that there are monsters lurking in the forest. In the blink of an eye, the knight suffers a surprise attack and screams in pain. Thus, the dark and incredibly powerful monster appears, and the other knights ready themselves for the fight. One of them, all worried, starts questioning where the reinforcements are. The shadow beast advances with sharp claws, ready to attack. One of the knights is knocked down and screams for help as the creature approaches to deal the final blow. A quick and brutal strike hits the monster, and it turns to the others, who are frozen in terror. Suddenly, the monster's mouth opens, revealing a row of sharp teeth. The survivors are paralyzed, unsure how to react, but out of nowhere, something catches the monster's attention, distracting it and leading it into a trap. With the creature distracted, a mountain, or rather the beast girl, leaps from a tree and charges at the monster. With a yellow glow in her hands, she attacks the shadow with all her strength, but the monster grabs her with its tentacles and slams her down hard. Then, the blade cuts through the tentacles and the knight appears as a true savior. Our protagonist unleashes a powerful blow and finishes off the shadow creature, once and for all. The remaining knights thank the team, saying they've saved their lives, but the protagonist merely nods and turns to leave without saying a word. Suddenly, an elf appears and thanks the group, saying they were worried about the soldiers. The beast asks why the knight always helps humans, if it is so rare. One of the knights warns them not to leave, as the forest is still treacherous. His friends are shocked to see who they encountered in that forest. The protagonist is confused by their reaction and asks who this person is. Talha, somewhat irritated by his lack of knowledge, pinches his ear, explaining that this is royalty. She introduces herself as the daughter of the kingdom of the dwarves, the mistress of Urada or Uragone. The scene quickly shifts to a towering tower, imposing against the starry sky of the city. The elf is left speechless upon realizing that she was the dwarf. The hero asks who Gromi is, and the elf confirms with a knowing look. Let him loose. He would never save a human. At first, a knight was disappointed, as he had hoped his friend's aversion to humans had lessened. He asks where the group leader is, and the elf explains that she went to the guild. He adds that the guild cannot get involved in this mess, and that she must be having a tense day. Suddenly, the elf exploded at the knight, who referred to her as child, critiquing him for being so ignorant. The dwarf laughed and said he didn't care about that, while the elf continued to defend the princess's honor. The protagonist seized the moment to state that she was already married and had children, which left everyone in shock. But he didn't thank her again, emphasizing that they avoided a huge incident in the forest. Our heroes just nodded, unsure of what to say about all this. Just then, the guild receptionist and the princess returned from the meeting with the authorities. The princess, all sweet, asked for the cool kids who saved her to introduce themselves. With a smile, the young woman declared that she would never forget the names of her benefactors. She began to prepare to leave, saying that the carriage was waiting outside. Before saying goodbye, the princess mentioned that a small red item would suit him well, leaving the elf with a nagging suspicion. Back at the guild, the receptionist remarked that the princess was a special case, and that there was still much to be checked. The elf then decided it was better to wait and mount, and our hero just nodded in agreement. As time passed, everyone began to grow impatient, and the barber wondered if anything had happened. Any trouble, right? Out of nowhere, the elf's stomach growled, and he realized he still hadn't put anything in his belly. So, our protagonist stood up to serve the meal he had prepared. With a somewhat magical aura, a bowl of fresh green salad appeared in front of the blonde archer. The elf was shocked, as it was the first time he saw his friend eating only vegetables, and even offered a bit, but the elf declined, saying that even though it was greens, he was sure he had cooked it using monsters. Wow, now this target is really in doubt, you know, because the salad looked delicious, but the suspicion, regarding the cook was much greater. With a face that suggested he was not happy, he asked for a little salad, since they weren't monsters this time. So clearly our protagonist served the elf, right? Somewhat apprehensively. The elf even took a piece with his fork to taste. He closed his eyes and took a bite, expecting something horrible, but was surprised by the extremely wonderful flavor. Suddenly, the elf's eyes began to sparkle with that explosion of flavor, my friend, that filled his mouth. He exclaimed, "Wow," all excited that the salad was delicious, brother, and that it was the best thing he had eaten since he left the forest. Afterwards, he asked what that soft thing in the salad was. The knight hesitated, didn't answer, but eventually revealed that the delicacy, he thought it was good, you know, and actually, it was just a little piece of slime, the blonde. Archer was horrified, dude, with that discovery and panicked, remembering that he had just eaten a slime. Oh my god, are you crazy? The guy tried to explain himself, right? He said he had no ingredients and decided to make something similar to korgiak. He started talking about how he made a salad because it was the simplest option and that most of the vegetables were normal. But then the knight let slip that he had dried and crushed the bodies of the monsters to use as seasoning. The elf had a complete meltdown upon hearing that. The knight assured him that the seasoning was quite spicy. Furious, Dahlia grabbed the knight and yelled that he had made the elf eat a monster again, brother, and that now, this time, it was in slimes. The knight recalled that the elf had said it was delicious, right? Not just because he discovered, it changed the taste. I think not, huh? But the elf retorted that he didn't know they were monsters. Just then, the leader of the group appeared and said that everyone was full of energy at night, right? The elf said he had been saved by her, and the girl mentioned that she was tired of drowning in paperwork. Then, with a proud smile, the leader announced that, starting today, she was promoted to rank B. The friends looked as if they had seen a ghost, not understanding how that had happened. The group then went to join the guild. Master, who was there with a serious expression on his face. Then, the vice master introduced himself and asked if they were the group that had saved the princess. He turned to Mount and confirmed her identity nervously to the guildmaster. Then, with that, he handed over the promotion certificate for rank B and congratulated the girl on her achievement. The beast girl literally lit up when she received that certificate and began celebrating that victory, shouting with joy. So, with the document in hand, she was almost delirious, saying she was one step away from reaching rank A. Wow. The elf congratulated the girl, and she joked that by the time he got there, she would already be ranked. But then the guildmaster cut the celebration short by asking if they knew about the group's ranking criteria. He explained that the group's rank is defined by the member of the lowest rank, so it was still rank C. With that, the Beast Girl realized they needed to hurry to become a rank B group. But our protagonist then approached the Guildmaster and asked if he had any news about a dragon. Oh my. Seeing this with a very grim look, he questioned whether the knight knew anything about the golden dragon that had attacked Dorama. The Guildmaster fell completely silent for a time, and, oh brother, that time felt like an eternity before he responded. He told them that the story was from long before he was born, but that he had heard several things about it. The scene then showed a city in flames with cries of pain, despair, and chaos everywhere. The friends watched in silence, waiting to hear what the Guildmaster had to say. The master of that guild said that Director Days knew more about it since she was the longest-serving employee. Then, with that, the elf offered to guide them, and our protagonist thanked her for her kindness. Meanwhile, the Vice Master was in his office, taking and reading important documents. He looked at the paperwork with the name Maranglass, appearing quite thoughtful about the night. The man wondered how such a strong figure had appeared out of nowhere in this small town, and realizing that he was after the Golden Dragon, the Master decided that he needed to keep an eye on that guy. The director asked how he knew about the dragon, and revealed that he had organized the case records back to the Zeros. Then, he inquired where the creature had been after the attack on Adorama. The elf thought for a moment, and asked if he wanted to know whether the dragon had been defeated or not. Then, she revealed that the dragon had been subdued by adventurers during that terrible time. A knight was completely shocked by that news. You gotta be kidding me, brother. But was it really subdued? Maybe that didn't happen. After all, that dragon died ages ago. And what about their revenge, huh? What could have happened? What has this guy been living through all this time? He thought for a little, and it seemed like this information wasn't entirely accurate. But is it? What does he mean by that? The girl continued stating that the records say he was subdued, but it was probably recorded that way strictly based on the scenario of the time. During the subjugation, a considerable amount of fire magic rained down on the dragon, and even charred some adventurers nearby. But when the flames died down, the dragon had vanished from the scene, leaving no traces, just destruction. So, does that mean that not even a corpse remained? Yes, that's right. It seems he disappeared as if he never existed. No bones, nothing, since there were no attacks or sightings afterward. The guild decided to record the complete subjugation, but they also know that Julian's magic cannot reduce a dragon's corpse to ashes. In other words, the mad dragon is undoubtedly still alive and hiding somewhere. He clenches his fist, and it seems he will set out in search of that dragon. I don't know, huh? Is there any place he could gather more information and details? The girl said that maybe he could find more information at the Thieves Guild. But unfortunately there is no more Thieves Guild. Andorra no longer exists. If we were talking about one on a larger scale, the closest one is Forgotten in the Western Desert. Now he's thinking, Forgotten? Yes, it is. To be exact, it's located in the Rolo Desert to the west. That Forgotten Guild has only one affiliate, so they aren't moving anywhere. After all, that place serves as housing and lodging for adventurers from the desolate wild region. But there's a little problem. The average level of monsters in the west is much higher, and it's also a place where the guild restricts entry based on rank, which means he can't accept requests from the west unless he becomes a rank B adventurer. Yes. There are always these hurdles. He thanks her for the heads up, and she said that if he has no more questions, she'll be on her way. Yeah, it seems that place is pretty dangerous, and the guild also controls entry. So if he goes west, he might finally get more information about the crazy dragon. That's it. He clenches his fist, determined to do whatever it takes to catch that crazy dragon. So all he has to do is get promoted to rank B. A few days later, in the Exhalen Guild Hall, the adventurers arrive and everyone notices their presence. Everyone is carrying piles of things, looking exhausted. Wow, some people comment that that team is back again. This is the third time today, it seems. They accepted almost 10 requests last week, and thanks to them, the market is flooded with byproducts from orcs and harpies, causing prices to plummet. Everyone thinks this is terrible. How do they manage to do so much in such little time without resting? I think he's using AI, it must be. Dude, either he's got a well-rounded team, right? Imagine if the guy has a full team in AI. Holy moly. The guy can scale a beast girl, tell them to check the requested items. The attendant asks them to... Wait a moment. Everyone is disgusted. After all, Moreau's eating habits are worse for his health, especially his mental health.
He preferred to deal with several monsters at once rather than see that guy eat. The beast girl agrees too. Just yesterday, he started saying he would try to eat 15 types of slimes and was hit by all possible status ailments. Are you crazy? And the guy keeps eating. Damn, the guy is such a butcher that he ate the slimes while they were still moving and kept saying that slimes are better in salad. And look at his face. If I could see, I would think he was thinking about eating monsters.
Again, the guy only thinks about eating monsters. The elf looks at Imitar and asks me if she is not going to learn the status removal skill quickly. Yeah, she thinks that seems necessary. Then the attendant thanks for waiting and confirms all the requested items and hands over the payment. There's also a promotion request for 2 team members and a party rank promotion request. Wow, surprisingly fast this time, huh? That girl prepared everything they could hand over as soon as they returned. From the dungeon, come to think of it, she was seen lighting the lamps for the new Sun Festival. At the road barrier, it seems that festival was starting soon. So that means she wants to refer to that festival that happens every summer. The elf is a bit confused, and by the way, he is a male elf named Dahlia. Okay, don't be fooled, that's right, Neo. It's going to be lively for the next 2 weeks. My God, it happens every year. Why do they put in so much effort? It all worked out. I was thinking about taking a break anyway, right? No, the girl keeps saying they have been running non-stop lately, so how about we take it easy during the festival? An elf agrees since he also hasn't taken any days off besides the weekend so far. Our protagonist keeps watching the board while thinking about the new Sun Festival, and he remembers that a long time has passed, and they continue doing this festival year after year. And if he remembers correctly, he used to wander around too, looking at festivals with everyone. The attendant keeps saying that the check is complete, and that means that Lady Dahlia and Lord Maram Glass, both of you have met the promotion conditions. Damn, man, this elf looks like a man, but they call him she. So sometimes they call him he, sometimes they call him she. I'm just telling the story, okay? I'm not confused either. Maybe it's a female elf dressed as a he, disguising as a he, alright? And that's when I understood. I'm just as confused as you guys, but let's move on. We'll get it figured out later. The clerk says he can now promote to rank B. Just one last check to go. Wow, what wonderful news. But suddenly, someone gets closer and says he overheard that coincidentally after passing by, but just couldn't help celebrating. That guy is back again. The beast girl doesn't like this guy. What could it be this time? Didn't he get into enough trouble? But he said he's not provoking anyone. He just passed by to acknowledge everyone's hard work. One day he might even become a rank A like him. Our boy just turns away while thinking it's better not to interact with crazy people. I agree with that. By the way, since he has reached level B, isn't it about time to show his face? The guy keeps chattering after all. He's been curious for quite a while. This guy is a very strong individual who appeared out of nowhere. It seems like he even fell from the sky, right? However, there isn't a single person who recognizes his face, which leaves him quite confused. From rank B, he's practically considered a main force of the guild, and if this guy can't even show his face, how is the guild going to trust him? The beast girl. And the elf starts shouting at him to stop stalling because they mentioned his face. Suddenly, if it has nothing to do with that, is this guy obsessed with Marin's face? The blonde remains quite cynical and laughs, asking if he said something wrong. Why is everyone so defensive? The girl urges him to leave his teammate's face alone. A guy calls out Emotar, and she asks what it is, but thinking back, has anyone seen his strength? Isn't that odd? This guy is really cool and eats monsters. Suddenly, the clerk interrupts all that chaos, saying that the hero is right. Wow, just the clerk next to the hero. Yes. Starting from rank B, he is considered a regular guild member, so his identity should be clear. Everyone should know him. Therefore, they need a record of the appearance and characteristics of the adventurer during the registration. There's no other way to get this. Unfortunately not. Even if an elf guarantees it, it won't matter. That's exactly what he's saying. The clerk says rules are rules. If it's difficult to show him in public, you could just show him to us, the receptionists. What does this guy mean by that? The blonde keeps raving. Does Excellent Gilda plan to officially cover up the face of a dangerous individual with the title of Relative Slayer? Oh, this story is so wrong. He continues to contest if this guy is a dangerous individual. With uncertain identity, don't you think adventurers have the right to know your face for their own safety? True, that helmet guy had rumors that he only attacked and killed groups of beginners in the past. Just because he has accepted requests discreetly doesn't mean his criminal record disappears. Now that he mentioned it, it's a bit scary. That bastard was deliberately inciting everyone's anxiety. The guy keeps laughing and saying that unless there's a reason you can reveal your identity, there shouldn't be a reason why you can't show your face. Surely, right? No. My boy. But our hero remains silent, saying nothing. The beast girl calls out Marin's name, telling him not to listen to that guy. In the end, they'll find another way to clarify his identity, no matter what happens. Marin slaps the beast girl's hand before she can put her hand on his shoulder, and she starts stuttering. Marin, what is it? Suddenly, he starts sweating cold, and a strange aura begins to emanate from his body. The elf asks if he's okay, and he starts shouting, "No, no!" That's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for the hype on the video as well. If this video does well, we will bring the continuation. Thanks for watching. Thanks, and stay tuned for the next video.